her heart racing, as she prepared herself for the moment she had been waiting for over the past 2 years. Gulp. Sir. I've been waiting for this moment for the past 2 years to thank you. With a gulp, Leah thanked Jojo sincerely for saving her life 2 years ago, a moment she had been holding on to all this time. I did what I had to. And I should also thank you for believing in our DMC and joining it. Hearing Leah's thanks, Jojo accepted it graciously and also expressed his gratitude for her trust in him and his Demon Management Center, DMC, organization. When Leah listened to Jojo, she felt her heartbeat quicken suddenly, her face turning crimson. Click. I'll show this to Hope. Klaus, who had been listening to the conversation, smirked, pulling out his mobile phone and capturing the moment. He sent the photo to Hope while typing a teasing message in the chat box to his daughter. Freya and Elijah gave Klaus a deadpan look as he chuckled to himself, clearly amused and imagining things. Grr. Their conversation was interrupted by a growling sound that immediately put everyone on alert. Derry nearly climbed up a tree in fear, dragging his sister Trish along, but she pulled her hand free and moved closer to Jojo, feeling safer with him than away. Hearing the growl, Galen instinctively pulled her granddaughter Addison behind her for protection. Chuckle. Elijah, it seems that kid is awake. Hearing the growling coming from the car, Klaus chuckled, turning to his brother with a wide smile. Sigh. He must be hungry since he's a newborn. With a sigh, Elijah calmly walked toward the car where James was kept. James, the assistant of Sheriff Dan Tashtigo and a key member of the special team formed to hunt and kill the creeper, had been turned recently. How about using this? After pondering for a moment, Klaus pointed at Rocket, the horse Galen and Addison raised on their farm. No. He's like my family. Hearing Klaus's suggestion, Addison's face turned pale, and she hurried to stand protectively in front of Rocket. If you need blood, you could take it from the pigs in the mud puddle over there. Galen pointed across the field, where outside the fence a group of pigs was playing and bathing in a muddy puddle. After feeding James with the pig blood, he finally calmed down, drinking a large amount before turning to listen to Elijah's conversation quietly. He was the sole survivor from the team, saved by this group of people who weren't even normal humans. When James introduced himself and explained why he and his team were attacked, it left Jojo and the others stunned. Sheriff Dan Tashtigo had died in the attack, and James, who had been on the verge of death, was saved by Elijah, who turned him into a vampire. At the time, they believed James could be a vital lead toward uncovering the creeper's plans. Additionally, Elijah felt Freya needed an extra hand to assist them. So, what are we going to do now? After calming down from the shocking realization that he was no longer human, James took a deep breath and looked at Elijah, asking the question. By his reaction, it was clear he was uncomfortable with his new reality as a vampire. The experience of drinking blood from pigs rolling in the mud left him with a sour taste, though it helped him regain control over his thirst. Ms. Galen, is there any haunted party happening in any nearby village? After thinking deeply, Jojo suddenly remembered a pamphlet he had seen in the vision, showing cultists praying to the creeper. He clearly recalled it being an invitation to some kind of haunted party. Hearing this, Galen shook her head, indicating she didn't know anything about it. But Addison seemed lost in thought, recalling a few people handing out pamphlets advertising and inviting people to a party happening in Louisiana, with a scary Halloween costume theme. According to the reaction she had seen from her schoolmates, many of them seemed interested in attending. Yeah, there is a party happening in Louisiana. A few days ago, some people dressed in Halloween costumes were giving out pamphlets, inviting the high school students to the party. Breaking the silence, Addison told Jojo what had happened at her school a few days earlier, as she was leaving after classes had ended. Sigh. Then our next stop is Louisiana. With a sigh, Jojo declared their next destination. At that moment, the creeper's hand still clutched in Jojo's grip, began to burn with hellfire. Struggle, struggle. The flames consumed the creeper's original hand, which soon turned to charcoal. With a press, Jojo crumbled it into ashes. Somewhere in the forest, the creeper had cruelly killed one of the boys who had dared to pee on his favorite truck. The gruesome scene left the other two boys running in fear and terror, horrified by the creeper's monstrous appearance and brutal strength. Sneer. With a sinister sneer, the creeper grabbed a spear from the back of his old truck. He aimed at the fleeing boys, patiently waiting for the perfect moment to strike and take them both down in one attack. One of the boys was running normally, while the other, with an injured leg, struggled to get as far away as possible, his face pale with terrors. _______. Thud. Just as the creeper was about to execute a double kill, his palm gripping the spear tightly suddenly crumbled to ashes. Ah! A piercing scream echoed through the forest as the creeper's eyes widened in shock. His hand burned bit by bit, consumed by an otherworldly flame. He could do nothing but endure the unbearable pain. For the first time, fear flickered across the creeper's face. He staggered, placing his other hand on the old truck to steady himself, but the agony was unimaginable. Swish swish! In the blink of an eye, the creeper accidentally triggered one of his traps. A sharp iron rail shot out, piercing straight through his head and eyes, rendering him motionless for the time being. Asterisk. Author's POV. A/N. Thanks for reading the chapter. Please give a review in Power Stone. Chapter 122, Chapter 117, BANANAS. Bananas. Police Station. While Jojo and the others were deciding their next destination, the situation at the police station was far from good. After taking David to the hospital, Dana immediately rushed to the station to check on the status of reinforcements, which had still not arrived since she left for the hospital. What's the situation? Did anyone get injured? She approached the ambulance, its rear doors nearly torn apart by the creeper's brute force, and directed her question to a nearby officer. He was responsible for analyzing the damaged ambulance for clues. According to the driver and his accomplice, who were in another ambulance behind this one, they claimed to have seen a monster. It destroyed the door and then flew into the sky. Hearing Dana's inquiry, the officer gave a quick salute before explaining the current state of affairs and the eyewitness testimony. ________. Mother****er. Dana's face darkened as she cursed internally, her expression grim. And from the forensic analysis of the muscle tissue found inside the ambulance along with the dead body, the expert couldn't come up with any logical explanation. He's guessing that somehow one of the bodies exploded. Noticing Dana's expression, the officer continued, detailing the findings of the forensic expert assigned to the case. With a nod, Dana walked to a secluded spot, pulled out her phone, and dialed the number Jojo had given her to stay connected in case of emergencies. Day 22. A/N. I made a few changes to start the plot of Jeepers Creepers 2 on the 22nd day instead of the 23rd. Deep in thought, Jojo decided to take Galen and her granddaughter Addison along with them. They followed the group's car in the old truck that Galen owned. Ring! Ring! As the car traveled toward Louisiana, their destination where the creeper's current body resided in an old mansion, Jojo's phone suddenly started ringing. Connect the call, Sarah. In a calm tone, Jojo instructed Sarah to connect the incoming call while he focused on driving. Once the call connected, Dana began explaining the situation on her end. She detailed how the creeper had emerged from one of the ambulances carrying the dead bodies of its victims from the nearly burned down old church. We've found a clue about the creeper's real body. We're currently heading to Louisiana, where it's located. After resolving this, I'll inform you. Until then, follow the instructions I gave you. Jojo responded calmly after hearing Dana confirm his theory about the creeper's puppetry. He reminded her to stick to the instructions he had given before she took David from the motel. Inside the forest. Deep in the woods, where the creeper's old truck lay parked, the creeper itself was motionless, its head and eyes pierced through by sharp grails. Caw-caw! Shiver shiver! Noticing the motionless body of the creeper, a few ravens descended from the sky, their wings flapping as they landed on its lifeless form. The ravens began pecking at the creeper, trying their best to tear off small pieces of flesh to sate their hunger. Feeling the persistent pecking, the creeper's hand started to shiver and twitch, signaling its slow return to consciousness. Thud! With a sudden movement, the creeper's hand slipped through one of the gaps between the grails and pulled a metal lever on the side. As the lever clicked, the grail that had pierced its head retracted upward, freeing the creeper's entangled skull. Flap flap! Opening its large, bat-like wings from its back, the creeper took to the sky with visible difficulty. Its body was severely damaged, impaled by its trap crafted meticulously by its own hands made of weapons so sharp they could slice through its tough skin and bones as if they were butter. The creeper's face was heavily disfigured. One eye was missing, half of its jaw was gone, and the left side of its face was a gaping hole where its ear had been entirely torn off. Now, the creeper urgently needed to find suitable prey with a healthy body to regenerate its missing parts. Grr! As it struggled through the air, it made a mental note: it would deal with the boys who had dared to pee on its favorite truck. It would make sure they paid dearly for what they had done. School business. A standard yellow bus was carrying a group of high school athletes, cheerleaders, and coaches, all returning from a championship basketball game. Their victory over one of the toughest opponents in the tournament had the atmosphere inside the bus buzzing with excitement. Bananas! 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 The students were singing, dancing, and cheering as the bus rolled down the road toward the school. Bang! Screech! A loud bang suddenly disrupted the celebration. The bus swerved dangerously, but the experienced school bus driver, Betty Borman, skillfully controlled it and brought it to a screeching halt. The students and staff, caught off guard by the unexpected explosion, sat in stunned silence. The once cheerful atmosphere had turned tense as everyone tried to catch their breath from the adrenaline rush. What happened, Betty? Coach Charlie Hanna, accompanied by his assistant coach, Dwayne Barnes, stood up and approached the driver's seat to inquire about the situation. Sigh. It seems like our bus tire just busted. Betty replied with a defeated sigh as she opened the door. She stepped out to assess the damage, followed closely by the two coaches, who felt responsible for ensuring the students' safety. Oh God, what is this? Ah! Betty froze in shock as she saw the bus tire had been pierced by an unfamiliar weapon, a shuriken. Its jagged edges gleamed ominously in the sunlight. As she tried to pull it out, its razor-sharp blades cut her hand, causing her to cry out in pain. Noticing her injury, Charlie stepped forward. With some effort, he managed to extract the shuriken. Holding it up for examination, both coaches stared at it in disbelief. It wasn't just the grotesque design of the weapon that unsettled them, it was the sight of a human tooth embedded in the back of the shuriken. Shit! Caught off guard, Charlie dropped the weapon to the ground and cursed under his breath. Betty, shaken but determined, headed back to the front of the bus to use the walkie-talkie to contact the school or anyone nearby for assistance. Unfortunately, the bus's location had no cell phone signal, leaving them stranded for the time being. Realizing it could take hours for a mechanic to arrive and repair the busted tire, the students began to exit the bus. Some wandered around the area, stretching their legs, while others climbed onto the roof of the bus to bask in the sun. Unbeknownst to them, they were being watched. After 5 hours. Even though Jojo thought Louisiana was close, taking a turn off the highway led to nearly 5 more hours of travel. Finally, they reached the outskirts of the state, surrounded by dense forest. Why is this place so deep in the woods? Klaus glanced at the sky, now shrouded in darkness, and shouted in frustration. Jojo, look! Leah, who had taken over the driving, pointed ahead at a school bus. It was in bad shape, clearly damaged from an accident. The strong scent of blood hung heavy in the air, making her grimace. Jojo narrowed his eyes as he studied the scene. His expression shifted from confusion to realization. Even though he had altered the plot, it seemed the creeper had still attacked the school bus. Without wasting time, Jojo instructed Leah to pull over. The car came to a halt, and the group stepped out. Jojo quickly turned to Galen, Addison, Trish, and Derry. Stay in the car with Klaus, Elijah, and James. James, you stand guard and alert us if the creeper tries anything. The newborn vampire nodded, his heightened senses already on alert as he scanned the surrounding area. As the group moved closer to the bus, the terrified students inside began screaming for help, their voices filled with panic. Calm down, kids. You're safe now. Rosalie's voice rang out, firm and reassuring, cutting through the chaos. Her commanding tone had an immediate effect. The students began to quiet down, though fear still lingered in their wide eyes. Jojo assessed the scene. The fear in the students' faces, the state of the bus, and the blood dripping from the roof told a grim story. Ignoring the warnings of the panicked kids, who shouted about a monster, Jojo climbed onto the bus's roof to investigate further. What he found made his stomach churn. A half-eaten human head lay grotesquely on the roof alongside a headless, mutilated body. Roar! A loud, guttural roar suddenly broke through the stillness. Jojo's head snapped up toward the sky, where he saw the creeper silhouetted against the moon. Its one intact wing spread wide as it dove rapidly from the sky. Despite the missing arm and its heavily damaged body, the creeper's hatred burned bright, visible even from afar. Swish swish! The creeper hurled shurikens and daggers with deadly precision, their sharp edges gleaming in the moonlight as they sped toward Jojo. Its roar echoed again, filled with rage and a clear intent to kill. Jojo's muscles tensed as he prepared for the confrontation, his sharp eyes tracking the creeper's every move. Asterisk. Author's POV. A/N. Thanks for reading the chapter. Please give a review and Power Stone. Chapter 123, Chapter 118, Dream of Minxie. Human Skin. Half an hour earlier. Minxie Hayes, the cheer captain responsible for the cheerleaders supporting the basketball team, started to feel uneasy as their school bus veered off onto a dilapidated road. The pavement was cracked, flanked on both sides by barren, brown land. At the horizon, a dense forest loomed where the brown expanse ended. The bus jolted to a stop, the loud pop of a burst tire breaking the stillness of the rural area. At first, Minxie and the other students shrugged it off. They filed out of the bus, stretching their legs and chatting while the coach called for a mechanic. Some students lounged on the roof, soaking in the sun, while others roamed around, taking in the eerie emptiness of the surrounding landscape. Hours passed before a mechanic finally arrived. He worked quickly, replacing the damaged tire. Once the job was done, he gave a curt nod and left, his truck disappearing down the same road they had come from. Coach Charlie clapped his hands to gather everyone's attention. "All right, everyone, back on the bus. We're leaving in 5 minutes." Minxie, drained from cheering during the game and the hours of idle waiting, found her seat and leaned back. Her eyes fluttered closed as fatigue began to pull her into a light doze. The rhythmic hum of the bus starting up was interrupted by a sudden, sharp awareness. Something felt off. As the bus began moving, Minxie glanced out the window, her eyes catching movement on the edge of a nearby farmland. A small boy stood there, ankle-deep in the mud, his clothes smeared with dirt. His wide, terrified eyes locked with hers as he raised a trembling hand to point at something behind the bus. His expression sent a shiver down her spine. Minxie turned her gaze to follow the direction he was pointing. Her heart skipped a beat. A figure was charging toward them from the horizon. It was a man with a hulking frame, dressed in a long coat and a wide-brimmed hat that cast his face in shadow. His movements were unnaturally fast, the ground beneath him kicking up clouds of dust as he barreled toward the bus. The fear etched on the boy's face mirrored the panic rising in Minxie's chest. "Coach!" she called out, her voice quivering with urgency as she turned back to the front of the bus. "There's someone." But when she looked out the window again, the figure was closer, his coat billowing behind him like dark wings. By the look of it, the figure was no human but a grotesque monster. Its jagged teeth and horrifying, gore-streaked facial features sent an icy shiver down Minxie's spine. As she watched in stunned horror, the creature drew a shuriken-like weapon from its coat. The razor-sharp edges gleamed wickedly in the fading light. Without hesitation, the monster hurled the weapon with terrifying speed straight at her. Boom! A deafening explosion shattered the air, followed by the screech of tires struggling against the road. Minxie jolted awake, her heart pounding violently in her chest. Her hands clutched the armrests as she gasped for breath, the vivid memory of her nightmare clinging to her like a shadow. Her skin was clammy, damp with cold sweat. But something was wrong. The bus swayed dangerously before coming to an abrupt, jarring halt. Betty, their seasoned driver, clenched the steering wheel, her face taut with concentration as she regained control of the vehicle. "Damn it, again!" muttered one of the boys seated near the back, frustration coloring his tone. The bus had stopped. Coach Charlie stood and turned to face the students. "Stay in your seats," he ordered, his voice firm but tense. "Nobody gets off the bus. We're in the middle of the woods, and it's not safe." Betty, Coach Charlie, and his assistant, Dwayne Barnes, exited the bus to inspect the damage. Outside, the three adults circled the bus cautiously. The back tire was completely blown, but something unusual caught Betty's eye. "Holy crap!" she whispered, her voice trembling as she crouched beside the tire. Embedded deep in the rubber was an object jagged, star-shaped, and unnatural. "A shuriken!" Betty's face turned grim as she glanced at the others. "It wasn't just a regular blowout," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Look at this." Coach Charlie bent down and carefully extracted the weapon. He turned it over in his hands, his brow furrowing. "What is it?" asked Dwayne, his voice shaking slightly. Charlie's face paled as he inspected the shuriken closely. His hands trembled as realization dawned. "It's..." He swallowed hard before continuing. "It's made of human skin and bone." Dwayne recoiled, his eyes widening in horror. He took the weapon with hesitant hands, examining it for himself. "That's impossible," he muttered, but his shaking voice betrayed his disbelief. The unsettling discovery sent a wave of panic through the bus. The students, who had been watching through the windows, overheard snippets of the conversation. Whispers turned to murmurs, and murmurs quickly escalated into fearful chatter. "Did he just say human skin?" one girl asked, her voice trembling. "Oh my God, what's happening?" another boy whispered, clutching his seat tightly. Minxie's nightmare replayed in her mind. The monster. The shuriken. The boy's warning. It all felt too real. She glanced out of the window again, her eyes scanning the shadowy woods for any sign of movement. A sinking feeling settled in her stomach. Whatever had thrown that weapon wasn't far away. To calm the panicking students, Coach Charlie stepped out of the bus, urging them to remain calm as he worked to ensure their safety. Minxie, along with a few others, followed him out hesitantly, keeping close to the vehicle. Charlie held up a flashlight, illuminating the road ahead to warn any incoming vehicles about the bus stalled on the roadside. He walked a short distance from the bus, sweeping the beam of light over the shadowy landscape to avoid further accidents and make the bus's presence more visible. The yellow beam flickered against the still woods, and Charlie muttered under his breath, trying to steady himself. Suddenly, a deafening sound broke the uneasy silence. "Ah!" A massive, dark shadow swooped down from the sky with terrifying speed, enveloping Charlie before anyone could react. Gasps erupted from the students as the figure rose into the air, taking Charlie with it. His screams echoed through the night, growing fainter as he was carried higher, leaving behind only faint trails of smoke. The students froze in shock. Betty's sharp voice snapped them back to reality. "Scotty, get the students back on the bus. Now!" she ordered, her tone urgent but firm. "Everyone, inside. No arguments." Scotty, one of the senior students, quickly began herding the others back into the bus, his voice quivering as he tried to reassure them. Meanwhile, Betty and Dwayne stayed behind, scanning the skies and the surrounding woods, their eyes darting frantically for any sign of Charlie or the thing that had taken him. Minxie hesitated, her heart pounding. A foreboding sense of déjà vu crept over her, and she recalled the humanoid demon from her dream just moments before the bus tire had burst. "Is this happening because of that thing I saw?" she whispered to herself, her stomach churning. The other students hurried onto the bus, but Minxie's curiosity and unease rooted her in place. She glanced over at Dwayne, who stood near the damaged tire, still examining the shuriken in his trembling hands. "It can't be," she murmured, her throat dry. She stepped closer, careful not to draw attention, and peeked over his shoulder. Her breath caught in her chest as she saw it, the shuriken from her nightmare. The jagged edges, the grotesque material, and the eerie, otherworldly craftsmanship were identical to the weapon the demon had thrown in her dream. Her hands clenched into fists, her mind racing. Was it just a coincidence? Or was my dream a warning? Minxie's confusion and fear overwhelmed her, but she forced herself to retreat. Not wanting to alarm anyone further, she boarded the bus with the others, stealing one last glance at the darkened woods. Something was out there. And whatever it was far from done with them. Betty, searching for Charlie with her flashlight, circled to the back of the bus. The beam of light swept over the darkened woods, her nerves fraying with every second of silence. She muttered a shaky, "Charlie, where are you?" Without warning, a monstrous figure with massive bat-like wings descended from the sky, its shadow eclipsing her entirely. "Ach!" Betty screamed as the creature's claws latched onto her, lifting her effortlessly off the ground. Her flashlight dropped and rolled, its beam slicing through the darkness in chaotic arcs. The students inside the bus froze, their eyes wide with terror as they watched the horrific scene unfold. The monster soared upward, Betty's screams fading into the night. For a moment, an eerie silence blanketed the group. The students sat in shock, struggling to comprehend the gravity of what they had just witnessed. Then the panic erupted. It took her. "The driver's gone. Monster! Monster!" One boy bolted upright, his face pale with fear. "Let me out! Let me out! I'm not staying here!" he screamed, pounding on the windows. His panic was infectious, and soon the bus was filled with cries of terror. Scotty, trying to keep his composure, stood and shouted. "Coach Dwayne, please move. If we run into the forest, we can outrun it." The assistant coach stood firmly near the bus door, blocking the frantic students. "Kids, calm down. We need to think this through." Before Dwayne could finish, razor-sharp claws smashed through the roof of the bus. The monstrous creature ripped open the door with unnatural strength, grabbing Dwayne by the shoulders and yanking him outside in one swift motion. "Ach! Help me!" Scotty, acting on instinct, lunged forward and grabbed Dwayne's legs, trying to pull him back. "Hold on, coach!" he shouted, straining against the monster's pull. But the creature was too strong. With a sickening crunch, Dwayne was wrenched upward into the night sky, dragging Scotty along with him. "Help me pull him down!" Scotty yelled. Several students grabbed his waist, pulling him back into the bus, their combined efforts finally breaking the creature's grip on him. Scotty stumbled backward, landing hard on the floor of the bus, but not before he was drenched in something warm and sticky. Blood. The coach's blood rained down from above, splattering the windows, the floor, and the terrified students. What the? Scotty stammered, looking at his trembling hands, slick with red. Above, Dwayne's screams abruptly cut off, replaced by the grotesque sound of crunching and tearing. The students froze, their terror reaching a fever pitch as the bus fell deathly silent, save for the nauseating sounds of something feasting above. Then, a shadow loomed over one of the bus windows. A humanoid creature, its pale, grotesque face twisted in hunger, pressed against the glass. Its black, soulless eyes scanned the terrified students as it sniffed the air, its nostrils flaring as if savoring the scent of prey. No one dared to move. Gulp. Why are you targeting us? Minxie, her voice trembling with fear, managed to step forward and address the creeper. The monster turned its gaze toward her, its black eyes narrowing as a sinister grin spread across its grotesque face. Its jagged, sharp teeth glistened in the dim light, a horrifying mockery of a smile. Minxie's heart pounded in her chest. Is this it? Am I going to die? The thought clawed at her mind as she stood frozen. Regret washed over her. If only she had realized sooner, if she had connected her dream to this moment, she might have been able to warn everyone. Vroom. Her spiraling thoughts were interrupted by the distant roar of an engine. The sound of an approaching vehicle grew louder, breaking the tense silence. The creeper snarled and shifted its attention toward the road. Its grin faltered as it leaped into the sky with a guttural growl, vanishing into the shadows above. The students inside the bus collectively exhaled in relief, their terror momentarily replaced by disbelief. Present. The creeper's eyes burned with hatred as it hurled its shuriken and dagger toward Jojo. Its movements were fueled by rage, its mind consumed by thoughts of revenge for the puppet Jojo had destroyed. This time, the creeper was determined to end Jojo swiftly before he could retaliate. Puff! With a sudden burst of energy, Jojo transformed into his Ghost Rider form. His entire body ignited with hellfire, the flames licking at the air around him. The ground beneath him seemed to tremble as his aura shifted into something primal and deadly. The transformation caused the creeper to hesitate momentarily, its confidence shaken. Thud! Thud! The shuriken and dagger struck Ghost Rider's fiery form, the force dragging him off the top of the bus and onto the road. The creeper's hesitation gave way to a sinister grin. It spread its massive wings and shot toward Ghost Rider at high speed. In its twisted logic, the creature believed that by dragging this fiery skeleton into the sky and dropping him from a great height, it could shatter Ghost Rider's bones and ensure its victory. Inside the bus. Oh! Another monster! We're dead! Scotty yelled, pointing at Ghost Rider with a trembling finger, his voice filled with panic. The other students followed suit, their fear mounting as they saw the flaming skeletal figure rise from the road. Thud! Don't panic, kids! He's here to save you! Rosalie shouted, slamming her hands against the bus to get their attention. Her voice was firm, commanding, and reassuring. Scotty wasn't convinced. Why should I believe you? He retorted, his voice cracking. Look at him. He's hideous, a skull covered in fire. You think something like that could be a hero? He looks like another monster. Rosalie's patience began to wear thin. Her fists clenched as she glared at Scotty. She wasn't about to let anyone insult her boyfriend, no matter the circumstances. Before she could respond, Minxie stepped forward. Her voice was calm but firm. I believe in her. She pointed out the window, her eyes fixed on the battle unfolding outside. Look! He's fighting the demon that's been hunting us. The students turned their attention to the window. Outside, Ghost Rider and the creeper clashed in a fierce, fiery battle, their every move sending shockwaves through the night. Asterisk. Author's POV. /N Happy Pungal. Thanks for reading the chapter. Please give a review and Power Stone. Chapter 124, Chapter 119, Creeper's Nightmare. When the creeper saw his shuriken and dagger strike Ghost Rider, forcing him off the roof of the bus and onto the road, a twisted sense of triumph filled its grotesque face. Without wasting a second, the creature clenched its right fist tightly. It had no left hand anymore and dove toward Ghost Rider with murderous intent, its wings slicing through the air like blades. Bang! The ground trembled as the creeper landed with a powerful thud, facing Ghost Rider head-on. Its right hand was coiled into a deadly weapon, ready to strike, while its left side remained a mangled reminder of its rage and loss. Flashback. The memory flooded back to the creeper as it lunged forward. The moment Ghost Rider had grabbed hold of the creeper earlier, something unusual had happened. The flames of Ghost Rider's hellfire triggered a connection, showing the monster flashes of its past and revealing the source of its rage. In the vision, the creeper remembered the last time it had felt such hesitation and fear. It had been a hunt. A group of siblings and their friends were traveling through its territory, unaware of the predator stalking them. The flashback shifted to a more recent event. It discovered a group of boys vandalizing its beloved truck. One boy had urinated on the tires, laughing, while the others kicked and punched the vehicle as though it were their own. Growl. Overcome with fury, the creeper swooped down, killing 2 of the boys in seconds. Just as it was about to impale 2 others with its spear, something unthinkable happened. Its left hand, the one it had kept preserved and hidden, crumbled to ash. The shock was paralyzing. The realization that its severed hand, its link to its former power, had been utterly destroyed filled the creeper with a hatred deeper than anything it had ever known. Flashback ends. As the creeper's fist barreled toward Ghost Rider's flaming skull, the fiery demon tilted his head at the last second, avoiding the strike effortlessly. Bang! The momentum of the creeper's failed punch left it off balance, and before it could recover, Ghost Rider's flaming fist struck upward with devastating force. Thud! Thud! The uppercut connected squarely with the creeper's chin, sending it flying backward through the air. The monster hurtled into a large tree at the side of the road, crashing into it with enough force to shake the surrounding branches. Hee hee! Ghost Rider let out a low, mocking laugh, the eerie sound echoing in the darkness. His skeletal hand stretched outward, palm open, as he summoned something with a flick of his fiery wrist. Be a good boy and let me cut your head off. I promise it'll be as painful as possible. The creeper groaned, pushing itself off the ground, dirt and splinters falling from its tattered coat. Its charred, crumbling chin ached from the impact of Ghost Rider's hellfire-laden punch. Thud! A loud metallic sound echoed through the night as an object hurtled toward Ghost Rider's hand. It was the axe the creeper had lost during their previous encounter at the rundown motel. The weapon had been taken by Ghost Rider as a trophy and stored in the trunk of his car. Ghost Rider caught the axe mid-air, his fiery grip enveloping its dark metal surface. He turned his head toward the creeper, whose glowing eyes locked onto the weapon with a flicker of recognition. Grr! The creeper growled, touching its damaged chin, only to feel the remnants of its skin and bone crumble under its fingers. Ghost Rider noticed the creeper's reaction to the axe and chuckled darkly. What's with the look? This is my loot now. Hellfire began to spread across the axe, consuming it in flames that licked and twisted along its edges. The weapon shuddered in Ghost Rider's grip, transforming into a more fearsome, hellish version of itself. Its blade glowed with infernal energy, and jagged flames danced along its surface, crackling with power. The creeper's grimace deepened as it watched its prized weapon corrupted by the Ghost Rider's hellfire. Roar! With a furious growl, the creeper pulled a dagger from its coat and launched itself at Ghost Rider, its wings propelling it forward at blinding speed. The dagger gleamed ominously, aimed straight at Ghost Rider's heart. The creeper's thoughts raced, if I can pierce his heart, no amount of fire or fury will save him. But Ghost Rider's burning sockets flared brighter as he spotted the incoming attack. Ray! The Ghost Rider's roar ripped through the night, shaking the ground beneath their feet. The sheer force of his voice sent a shiver down the creeper's spine, the predatory monster suddenly feeling the weight of its vulnerability. For the first time in centuries, the creeper remembered what it felt like to be prey. Roar! Determined not to succumb to fear, the creeper bellowed back with rage, fighting to suppress the unsettling realization that it was no longer the apex predator here. Ghost Rider stood firm, the hellfire-imbued axe resting heavily in his grip. "You think you can kill me? Let's see if you can handle the fires of hell first." As the creeper closed the gap, Ghost Rider swung the blazing axe with both hands, the weapon cutting through the air with a fiery arc aimed directly at its opponent. The creeper's mind, clouded with rage and the need for vengeance, propelled it forward with reckless abandon. Its dagger struck true, piercing Ghost Rider's chest. A sinister grin spread across the creeper's grotesque face, reveling in the belief that it had finally won. But something was wrong. The creeper's triumphant expression faltered, confusion seeping in as it felt no resistance, no sign of a mortal wound inflicted. Before the creeper could react, Ghost Rider's skeletal hand shot out, clamping down on the creeper's wrist with an unyielding grip. Ga-ga-ga-ga-ga-ga. A deep, mocking laugh erupted from Ghost Rider, the flames of hellfire in his skull flickering more fiercely with every passing second. The creeper's grotesque face twisted in terror, its instincts screaming that it had made a grave mistake. The creeper tried to free its hand, its formidable strength applied in a desperate bid to break Ghost Rider's hold. But the flaming demon's grip was immovable, as if hell itself had anchored him to this moment of vengeance. Slash! With a swift, brutal swing of his blazing axe, Ghost Rider sliced clean through the creeper's midsection. The monstrous body fell in two, the lower half tumbling lifelessly to the ground. The axe left behind a glowing, fiery scorch mark, the intense heat cauterizing the wound instantly. Ah! The creeper let out a blood-curdling scream, its voice filled with unbearable pain as the flames from the hellfire-infused wound intensified its suffering tenfold. Still clutching the creeper's hand, Ghost Rider calmly yanked the dagger from his chest. The molten weapon clattered to the ground, having been reduced to a warped, useless remnant by the infernal heat within Ghost Rider's body. One by one, Ghost Rider pulled out the shurikens and daggers embedded in his form, each glowing red-hot from contact with his fiery flesh. They dropped to the ground, steaming and hissing as they met the cool night air. The creeper's hatred burned in its glowing eyes as it glared at Ghost Rider, its frustration palpable. Once again, it had been defeated by this relentless force, and its puppet had been destroyed. Ghost Rider, sensing the creeper's lingering spite, leaned closer, his voice a low, menacing growl. "Let's meet face to face next time. Instead of hiding behind puppets like this." Raising his flaming boot, Ghost Rider pressed it against the creeper's chest. The hellfire spread quickly, consuming the monster's remains as its screams echoed into the night. Puff! With a final, agonizing wail, the creeper's body crumbled into ashes under the relentless inferno. As the flames receded, Ghost Rider's form began to change. The hellfire surrounding his body dissipated, and his skeletal visage gave way to flesh and humanity once more. In a single puff of black smoke, Jojo stood where Ghost Rider had been, his leather jacket smoldering slightly, but his expression calm and resolute. Without a word, Jojo turned and began walking toward the school bus. Inside, the students watched in stunned silence, their wide eyes peering through the windows at the figure of their unlikely savior. Minxie, still shaken but determined, placed her hand against the bus window, her gaze locked on Jojo. "He saved us," she whispered, her voice trembling with a mix of awe and relief. Jojo approached the bus, his shadow stretching long under the faint glow of the moonlight. As he reached the door, he looked up at the frightened students, his eyes calm but piercing. The school bus was silent, the students staring wide-eyed at Jojo as he approached. The memory of the terrifying demon that had hunted them was fresh, its brutal defeat by Jojo etched into their minds. None of them spoke, still processing what they had just witnessed. "Are you hurt?" The sound of Rosalie's voice broke the silence. Moving with superhuman speed, she zipped past the stunned students and appeared in front of Jojo. Her hands immediately began examining him, her touch gentle but insistent as she checked for injuries. Sigh. Relief washed over her face when she confirmed he was unharmed. Even though her mind had told her he would be fine, her heart refused to rest until she saw it for herself. Chuckle. I'm fine, Rose. Jojo said with a soft laugh, reaching for her hand and pulling her into a warm hug. You. Before she could finish, Jojo leaned in and sealed her lips with a kiss. It was quick but heartfelt, leaving Rosalie momentarily stunned. When the kiss ended, she gave him a mock punch on the shoulder, her cheeks flushed with mock indignation. Don't come closer. Stay away. Scotty's panicked voice rang out as Jojo took a step closer to the bus. The boy pointed a trembling finger at him, his eyes wide with fear. Rosalie frowned but didn't respond. Instead, Freya approached Jojo, glancing at the students inside the bus. How are we going to deal with them? Freya asked, concern evident in her voice. The students had seen everything, Jojo's transformation, his fiery battle, and the defeat of the creeper. Sigh. Jojo sighed heavily. Freya, wipe their memories of the creeper. Replace it with something mundane. Say they were attacked by a serial killer who took the adults and tried to harm them before being stopped. Freya nodded and began preparing her memory-altering spell. No. You can't just erase our memories without permission. Scotty's voice rose again, his face contorted with anger. His outburst was met with a low chuckle from Freya, who turned to him with a sly grin. We're not asking for your opinion, kid. She said, her tone dismissive. The other students exchanged nervous glances, their faces showing unease but lacking the courage to speak up. However, one hand slowly rose. Wait. Minxie said, her voice trembling but firm enough to draw Jojo's attention. Before we were attacked, I had a vision about him, the demon. It warned me about the danger, but I didn't understand it in time. If you erase my memory, I might miss another warning like this. Please, don't take that away from me. Jojo studied her for a moment, his expression unreadable. Finally, he nodded. Don't erase hers. He instructed Freya, pointing at Minxie. Freya gave a small shrug. Fine, one exception. Before Scotty or anyone else could protest further, Freya completed her spell. The students froze for a few seconds, their memories rapidly being rewritten. When they came to, they no longer remembered the creeper or Jojo's transformation into Ghost Rider. Instead, their minds held a fabricated story of a serial killer's attack, the missing adults, and their harrowing escape. Jojo approached Minxie, handing her a small card. Here. If you ever want to know more about this side of the world, or join us, this is where you can find me. No pressure, just a suggestion. Minxie looked at the card, her fingers trembling as she took it. Jojo stepped back, pulling out his phone to contact Dana. He quickly reported the events, explaining the memory alterations for security purposes. As they walked away toward their vehicle, sirens filled the air. A patrol car arrived at the scene, and Freya crafted a simple explanation for the officers. They had come to rescue the students, and the serial killer had fled upon seeing them. Jojo glanced back at the bus one last time before climbing into the car. Next stop, Louisiana. He said, his tone resolute. The vehicle roared to life, and the group sped off into the night, leaving behind a quiet road and a busload of students with altered memories and one girl clutching a card that hinted at a far bigger world than she had ever imagined. Asterisk. Author's POV. /n Happy Motto Pungal. Thanks for reading the chapter. Please give a review and Power Stone. Chapter 125, Chapter 120, Creeper Wants Revenge. Sam's Demise. Louisiana. The mid-afternoon sun cast long shadows across the Louisiana highway. Under a skeletal oak tree, Lane hunched over, her breaths ragged, as she wiped her mouth with the back of her hand. Her dark brown hair clung to her face, damp from sweat and the humid air. The dizziness in her head made the world tilt, but she braced herself against the tree's rough bark, trying to steady her swaying form. A faint whack echoed as she coughed once more, her body protesting the upheaval. From above, a soft flutter of wings broke the stillness. A white raven descended silently, perching on one of the barren branches above her. Its beady red eyes gleamed with an unnatural intelligence, locking onto Lane as if observing her every movement. Its eerie gaze sent a chill down her spine, though she couldn't explain why. Below the bird, embedded in the tree trunk, was a familiar shuriken, its wicked edges glinting faintly in the sunlight. Lane leaned back against the tree, finally steadying herself. Her brown eyes shifted to the car parked a short distance away. Inside, her boyfriend sat, scrolling through his phone, oblivious to her state. Her expression flickered with a mixture of guilt and frustration. Pulling out her phone, she glanced at the signal bar's barely one. She hesitated, then began dialing, her fingers trembling slightly. "Hey, it's me." She started, her voice quiet, almost inaudible over the rustling leaves. Miles away, in the heart of a dense forest, a decrepit garage lay hidden, consumed by neglect. Its surroundings were a chaotic landfill of e-waste, rusted appliances, and decayed medical supplies. The stench of rot clung to the air, suffocating the area in a sickly haze. From within the garage, something stirred. A pale, skeletal hand emerged from the piles of debris, its gnarled fingers curling as if grasping for life itself. The skin clinging to the hand was cracked and dry, resembling parchment left to wither in the sun. Slowly, a figure began to drag itself into view, its movements slow and agonizing, like a corpse clawing its way out of the grave. The figure was the creeper. Its body was in a grotesque state, the once monstrous frame reduced to a hollow, mummified husk. Its chest heaved weakly, struggling for breath. The face, barely recognizable, was a mass of desiccated flesh, with only one bloodshot eye managing to pry itself open. That single eye darted around, taking in the dim surroundings of the garage. The creature's thin, cracked lips parted as a low, guttural growl escaped, a sound that echoed with rage and defiance. The creeper's claw-like hands scraped against the ground as it dragged itself further, leaving behind a trail of white, powdery skin that crumbled off its body with each movement. Despite its frailty, a burning hatred radiated from its lone eye. It had been defeated, humiliated, but now it clawed its way back from the brink of death, fueled by vengeance. Above, a lone white raven cawed sharply from the treetops, as if heralding its master's return. The creeper's body, left abandoned for ages in the decrepit garage, was in a pitiful state. Its brittle limbs moved with agonizing slowness, the mummified skin flaking off with each drag across the filthy ground. Deep within its core burned an insatiable hunger, both for sustenance and vengeance. After what seemed like an eternity of crawling, its lone bloodshot eye landed on a writhing colony of worms burrowed in the damp mud. The creeper paused, its breath ragged, its skeletal fingers twitching as it reached out. Underscore. With a guttural growl, it plunged its clawed hand into the writhing mass, scooping up a handful of worms. Munch munch. The creeper devoured them, the slimy creatures squirming even as they slid down its gullet. It consumed the entire colony with ravenous delight, savoring every morsel as though it were a banquet. Ah! A deep, guttural exhalation escaped its cracked lips as it tossed the remnants of mud aside. It felt the faintest flicker of strength returning to its decayed frame. But the satisfaction was fleeting, replaced by searing pain as it gripped the dead skin clinging to its face. With both hands, the creeper tore the mummified flesh away, the action accompanied by a guttural scream of agony. The ragged remnants of its old visage fell to the ground, revealing raw, charred flesh beneath. Its single functioning eye burned with an unrelenting hatred, its thoughts consumed by one person image, Jojo. The memory of their last confrontation burned as vividly as the flames that had engulfed the creeper. Jojo had not only thwarted its hunt but humiliated it, overpowering the creeper in its domain. The thought of Jojo's triumphant smirk twisted the creature's hatred into a singular, driving obsession. The creeper's lips curled into a sinister grin as it envisioned Jojo's screams of terror. It vowed to tear Jojo apart, to make him beg for mercy before savoring his defeat as a final, delicious victory. But even in its rage, the creeper knew the truth. The power gap between them had been glaringly evident during their last battle. Now, weakened and desperate, it had to rely on more than raw strength. The creeper resolved to accelerate its plans. The human followers who worshipped it had already been given orders to locate a chosen woman for the ritual. She had to be pregnant, a vital requirement for the summoning. Its followers had succeeded in identifying a suitable target. The creeper's lips curled again, this time in satisfaction. Soon, with the ritual completed, its lord would be summoned, and this time, it would have its harvest ready. It would regain not only its strength but also a level of power far beyond what Jojo could contend with. But for now, the hunger gnawed at it. The creeper's frail body required sustenance, and the worms had done little to satiate its enormous energy needs. It began dragging itself again, following an instinctual pull toward a nearby source of food. The forest around it grew darker as it moved, its decayed form inching closer to sustenance. Despite its pitiful state, the creeper's mind was alight with plans. It cursed its miscalculation having to resort to using a long-abandoned puppet. Who could have guessed it would ever stoop so low? But that didn't matter. It would rebuild. It would rise again. And when it did, Jojo would fall. Liana sighed. Under the tree, Liana steadied herself as the call connected after a long ring. Her relieved sigh was interrupted by the cheerful, mischievous voice on the other end. Ring. Call connected. What's up, girl? How are you? Sam's upbeat tone greeted her, as lively and teasing as always. He was Liana's and Chase's best friend and was currently en route to the Horror Hound Festival. Liana rolled her eyes playfully at his energy, speaking in a mockingly defeated tone. It hurts, and I'm dying. Sam paused, stunned for a moment, then tried to redirect the conversation. That's great, Liana shook her head at his clueless attempt, but before she could retort, a sudden coughing fit overtook her. Cough cough. Yui. What happened? Are you okay? Sam's fake concern barely masked his habitual teasing. Liana chuckled through the coughs, responding with a cryptic warning. It's too late for me. Save yourself. Sam's tone shifted slightly, nudging toward genuine concern masked by curiosity. Did you take the test yet? Her brief silence caused the air to grow heavy. Finally, she admitted with a serious tone. No, but I think it's positive. The symptoms are happening. So it counts as positive. Sam let out an exaggerated groan, followed by a mocking comment. You're always an optimist. Liana rolled her eyes again. I was not an optimist. And you know it. Sam tried to lighten the conversation, though he sounded distracted. Well, I was trying to hold it until I got there, but I need to. Twinkle Taylor, my soldier spy. So, I'm gonna call you back. Liana couldn't help but chuckle at his roundabout way of saying he needed to relieve himself. I didn't need to hear that. Call me when you reach the hotel. Sam, never missing an opportunity to tease, added one last quip. Don't puke on that Air Force vents. Her tone sharpened, catching his insinuation. Don't even joke about that. Sam laughed, brushing her reprimand aside. When did I joke about that? Before Liana could respond further, the call abruptly ended. Call ended. Liana shook her head, muttering under her breath with a mix of annoyance and affection. Sam, if you jinxed me. I swear to God, you'll go to hell. She turned and walked back to the car, her expression brightened slightly by the brief exchange. However, overhead, the white raven that had been watching her earlier silently followed, its crimson eyes locked on her every move. Sam sighed. After rushing into the forest, Sam found a secluded bush, unzipped his pants, and prepared to take care of his urgent business. His usual carefree demeanor masked any sense of danger, but unbeknownst to him, something sinister had been watching. The creeper rejuvenated just enough to stand and walk and had scavenged a trench coat, hat, and pants from a nearby scarecrow. Earlier, it had hunted and devoured a boar, barely satiating its immense hunger. But the creeper craved something far more satisfying: human flesh. As Sam relieved himself, the creeper, drawn by the scent of its next meal, perched silently atop a tree. Its crimson eye gleamed with a predatory hunger. Thud! With inhuman speed, the creeper leapt down, landing on Sam's back. What the? Sam, startled, twisted around, only to freeze in horror at the sight before him. The creeper, clad in its makeshift disguise, grinned menacingly. Its sharp, razor-like teeth gleamed in the dappled forest light, and its decayed skin made it look like death itself. Wah! Before Sam could fully process the nightmare, the creeper lunged. Ah! Its claws gripped his shoulders, pinning him down. Sam screamed, struggling futilely against the creeper's unnatural strength. The creeper brought its grotesque face close to Sam's, its rancid breath suffocating him. Then, without hesitation, it sank its fangs into his face. Crunch! Sam's screams echoed through the forest, but they began to weaken as the creeper tore into his flesh, feasting on him while he was still alive. Blood pooled on the forest floor as the creeper devoured its prey, savoring the taste of fresh human meat that would aid its continued regeneration. The once lively and mischievous Sam was no more, consumed by a creature that lived to hunt, devour, and terrorize. The forest fell silent again, save for the grotesque sounds of the creeper's meal. Asterisk. Author's POV. A/N. Thanks for reading the chapter. Please give a review and Power Stone. Chapter 126, Chapter 121, Lady Mania Crone. Antique Lady. Louisiana. After a hefty travel, Jojo and others entered Louisiana by passing by the wooden board showing that Louisiana welcomes you. Sigh. Finally, we arrived. Looking at the board they had passed through, Jacob, sitting in the back seat of the other car, had a relieved sigh. It's been a long journey riding the car on the lonely road where they have encountered only a handful of people or a car during the journey. Chuckle. Kid, you should have ridden those broken carts. Hearing Jacob, who was complaining about the ride, Elijah couldn't help but chuckle at the reaction. Probably he would be the one pulling the cart. Haha. Klaus, who was in the same car, hearing the conversation, couldn't help but tease the kid before him with a mischievous glint in his eyes. While the brothers were teasing and making fun of Jacob, who seemed to roll his eyes at their antics. What could he do? Fight them? Forget it, that would be his last day, and he'd die at the hands of these brothers. So all he could do was grit his teeth and put up with the mocking and jokes about him. Sniff. Can you smell it? Suddenly Klaus, who was making fun of Jacob, stopped and took a sniff and turned to look at Elijah with a serious expression. Yeah, it's blood, but it's coming from a little farther away, by the direction we are going. Nodding his head, Elijah took his mobile and sent a text message to Freya to inform her since she was traveling along with Jojo in the car in front of them. When Freya noticed the vibration on her mobile due to the notification, she took her mobile and opened it. She saw the message from Elijah, who seemed to have found a human blood smell from the direction they were heading. Rosalie, Alice, can you guys smell the human blood? Elijah and Klaus seem to be sensing it from the direction we're heading. Freya looked at Rosalie and Alice and asked them whether they could sense it. Sniff sniff. Underscore 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 underscore. Underscore 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 underscore. Yeah, not a strong one. Probably seems pretty far from here. Hearing Freya, both Rosalie and Alice became serious, and with a frown, they tried to smell the air. After a moment of silence, Rosalie was the first one to break it. Probably. Before Alice could fully speak her sentence, she was cut off by the sudden vision that came to her mind due to the gifted ability she obtained when she was converted into a cold one. Vision. In that vision, she saw Creeper hungrily feasting on a dead body whose head seemed to be missing, probably Creeper had eaten it. Then her vision shifted to a car in which a young couple named Lane and Chase seemed to be traveling. They arrived at an old antique shop and bought a map to go to the Horror Hound Festival. Her vision then shifted to a bathroom where the woman named Lane was looking at a pregnancy tester, who showed positive, with a complicated look. Finally, the vision shifted to a group of people dressed in black hoods. They seemed to be forcing Lane, who appeared to be in the midst of a ritual before a Creeper who seemed to be in a sleep state. Vision ended. When Alice suddenly started having a vision, all of them in the car, including Leah and Jojo in the front seat, became silent and waited calmly for Alice's vision to end. It seems like Creeper is targeting a pregnant woman named Lane for some kind of ritual with his followers. We need to go to the Horror Hound Festival. It seems she was going there along with her boyfriend, Chase. After the vision ended, Alice came back to her senses. She looked at Jojo and spoke seriously about her findings. _______. And Creeper has already killed someone. Probably we are smelling the blood from that body. After explaining the little clues she got using her gift ability, she paused for a second and remembered the bloody sight she saw where Creeper devoured a dead body in hunger and informed them about it. Horror Hound Festival. Hearing about Lane and Chase's situation and Lane being targeted at the Horror Hound Festival made Jojo think deeply with a frown. I didn't expect this. It seems like the timeline is messed up here. Lane and Chase, who must appear 23 years in the future, are also here. Thinking about the unexpected situation before him, Jojo became helpless. Who could guess that the timeline would be messed up here? Sigh. Let's speed up, the sun is starting to set. With a sigh, Jojo asked Leah to speed up. They needed to hurry and reach the Horror Hound Festival before nightfall. Since it was a horror festival, it must be taking place at night. After some time, they arrived at the spot where Sam had stopped his car earlier, and the stench of blood became stronger. Should we stop and check whether we could find anything related to Creeper? They guessed the car must belong to the unlucky victim of the Creeper, who devoured him in the vision Alice had. _______. Sigh. No, it's already too late. Let's go to the Horror Hound Festival. Hearing Alice's suggestion, Jojo, with a defeated sigh, shook his head and asked Leah to continue moving forward. As they rode the car through the path, they noticed an old building that seemed to be a shop, and Leah brought the car to a halt. Is this the shop? Leah, who was driving, asked Alice, who nodded her head, indicating that this was the same old antique shop she had seen in her vision. After getting the confirmation, they got out of the car, followed by Klaus and the others. When Klaus, Elijah, and James tried to enter the shop, following Jojo along with the group, they stopped at the doorstep with raised legs. Are you sure this is a shop? With a confused look on his face, Klaus looked at Alice and asked. If this was a shop, they should have no problem entering, as the public could visit during the shop's opening hours. ______. Probably it's also a house. Knock knock. Freya, seeing this, guessed and knocked on the door, which seemed to be closed. After the knock, there was no response from the other side of the door. Freya knocked again, this time a little louder. Thud thud. Thud thud. Creak. Who are you guys? What do you want? After the loud knocks, Jojo and the others heard the sound of footsteps approaching from the other side of the door, and the door creaked open. It revealed an old woman in her late 50s. She wore old-fashioned, Gothic-style clothing and had curling, grey, and slightly unkempt hair draped around her face. She eyed Jojo, Freya, and the others up and down with a frown, her eyes piercing and calculating. carrying a mysterious vibe. We are here to ask for help with directions to the Horror Hound Festival. When Jojo's eyes landed on the old woman, a gentle smile appeared on his face as he started the conversation, breaking the heavy atmosphere. _______. Snort. Go in the same direction, turn left at the first cross, and go straight for 5 minutes. You'll see the wooden board welcoming you to the Horror Hound Festival along with the directions. Hearing that these people were here for the Horror Hound Festival, the old woman snorted and, in a cold tone, spoke, then was about to shut the door. Thud. But a hand stopped the closing door. The old woman looked at Jojo in surprise, her expression taken aback. The gentle one from earlier was now smirking at her. How about inviting us in? With a smirk, Jojo asked the old woman in a cold tone. This surprised the others because they had never seen Jojo treat anyone, other than sinners, this coldly. _______. Move away, or I will call the cops. Seeing this, the old woman frowned and, in a cold tone, warned Jojo to step aside. The reason Jojo treated the old woman coldly was that he could sense the sins she had committed in her life up to now. And with his prior knowledge from his previous life, he knew clearly that the old woman before him was named Mania Crone. She was the cult leader of the group that followed and worshipped the creeper. In the cult, she was known by the name Lady Mania Crone. She was one of the main reasons for the manipulation that led Lane and Chase to go to the Horror Hound Festival. When the couple lost their way to the festival's location, she even manipulated them by selling them a map laced with the creeper's scent to guide them to the location. Asterisk. Author's POV. A/N. Thanks for reading the chapter. Please give a review in Power Stone. Chapter 127, Chapter 122, Twice. By him. Seeing the boy before she attempted to break into her house despite her clear warnings, Mania Crone's eyes narrowed with frustration. She fixed Jojo with a cold glare and warned. Leave now, or I'll call the cops. Hee hee. Instead of panicking, the boy smirked, a mocking expression that made her feel like she was the one being ridiculed. His composure unsettled her, and the silent confidence of the group standing behind him only added to her unease. What's so funny? She demanded, her voice trembling slightly. Jojo didn't answer. He simply placed his hand firmly against the door, preventing her from shutting it. You, take your hands off. Mania shouted, putting all her strength into slamming the door shut. She pushed with everything she had, but no matter how hard she tried, the door wouldn't budge an inch. Jojo stood unmoving, his smirk deepening as she screamed, cursed, and threatened him. Thud. With a single kick, Jojo forced the door open. The sudden impact sent Mania stumbling backwards, landing hard on the floor. Didn't he say to invite us in? Rosalie, who had followed closely behind Jojo, stepped into the house with a cold gaze. Without hesitation, she pressed her foot onto one of Mania's fingers and applied enough pressure to make the old woman wince in pain. Crack! Even though Rosalie barely used any strength, the sound of bone snapping echoed through the room. Ah! Mania screamed, her face twisted in agony. Come in! She cried, her voice filled with desperation. The pain left her no choice but to comply, and she quickly shouted the words to grant them entry. With the invitation spoken aloud, Klaus, Elijah, and the newborn vampire James stepped over the threshold. Being hybrids and vampires, they needed the owner's permission to enter, and now that they had it, Rosalie finally lifted her foot from Mania's hand. Be careful! You might hurt the old lady. Derry muttered, his voice tinged with concern as he looked at the injured woman on the floor. Don't worry, kid. Klaus said with a chuckle, patting Derry's shoulder. It's just a small fracture. She'll live. Klaus stepped further into the house, his sharp eyes scanning the surroundings. Didn't you say this was an antique shop? So where are all the antiques? He asked, frowning. The room was barren, a stark contrast to the treasure-filled shop Alice had described in her vision. Klaus turned to her, his expression demanding answers. It seems the place has changed drastically since the couple left. Alice explained, referring to Lane and Chase, who had been here to ask for directions to the Horror Hound Festival. You? How do you know about that? Mania's cold expression faltered, and her eyes widened in shock. Her face turned grim as a sense of foreboding washed over her. The moment this group entered her home, she knew something terrible was bound to happen. Hearing that the group before her had somehow tracked down the young couple she and her associates had spent years searching for, Mania's heart clenched with dread. Where did it go wrong? She thought, her mind racing. We planned every moment around that couple so our plan could succeed. But now, at the critical moment, when it was about to be completed, trouble has come knocking at my door. Grit. Mania clenched her teeth in frustration, trying to piece together where the breach had occurred. She had no idea how much the group was before she knew, but their very presence suggested something had gone wrong. Jojo, who had been watching her expression darken and shift with every passing second, finally broke the silence. Tell me. He began coldly, his voice like ice cutting through the tension. What is the purpose of the ritual that requires a pregnant woman and her unborn child as an offering? His words hit Mania like a physical blow. He grabbed her roughly and pulled her to her feet, forcing her to meet his gaze. Each word he spoke seemed to drain the blood from her face, leaving her pale and grim. She now knew, without a doubt, that this group knew far too much more than they ever should have. Hee. After a moment of silence, a twisted smile spread across Mania's face. She began to laugh a low, unsettling chuckle that quickly escalated into maniacal laughter. The sudden shift in her demeanor made Derry, who had moments earlier shown pity for her, take a step back in unease. You shouldn't have poked your fingers into other people's business. She hissed through her laughter, her voice dripping with venom. Because of that, all of you are going to die. Our Lord will slay you with his own hands. No matter where you go, no matter where you hide, you will be hunted down. Her crazed eyes scanned the group, searching for signs of fear or desperation. She wanted to see them tremble, to feel the despair of their inevitable doom. Ha ha ha. Mania's laughter filled the room, growing louder and more hysterical. Ha ha ha. But instead of fear, all she saw were smirks and mocking expressions. Some of them even laughed outright, as though her ominous proclamation was nothing more than a bad joke. Mania froze, confusion flickering in her eyes. Why were they laughing? Why weren't they panicking? Snort. You see. Freya stepped forward, a smug smile tugging at her lips. Your so-called lord has already been beaten. Twice. By him. She pointed at Jojo, who stared back at Mania with an unyielding gaze. Mania's body went rigid, her mind reeling. For a moment, it felt as though the world around her had stopped. Her thoughts became a chaotic whirlwind of denial. No. No. She stammered, her voice shaking as she stared at Freya. It can't be possible. You're just ordinary people. Her denial grew louder, more desperate, as the truth began to set in. No. You're lying. He's unstoppable. He's unfathomable. He dominates the world from the shadows. Her voice cracked as she shouted, her crazed expression twisting further into despair. Mania's earlier confidence began to waver. Her voice and eyes betrayed the fear growing within her as she realized the group before she was far more dangerous than she had anticipated. Swish hiss. Before she could finish her next sentence, James, who had been listening quietly, snapped. His face contorted with rage as his eyes turned pitch black and his fangs extended. Without hesitation, he lunged forward, grabbing Mania by the throat and lifting her effortlessly into the air. Mania gasped, struggling in his grip, her hands clawing at his wrist in vain. _______. WH, what are you? She croaked, her voice rasping as she stared in horror at James's inhuman features. You've been working with a demon, a monster that kills and devours innocent humans. James snarled, his voice low and dangerous. Tell us why, or I'll make you a dry corpse. Struggle. Mania thrashed in his grasp, her terror intensifying as his grip tightened. Finally, unable to endure the suffocating pressure or the killing intent radiating from him, she broke. He gave us immortality. She gasped, her voice frantic. And when the ritual is complete, we will accompany him to his land, a place where even the soil is gold. Gr. Can I kill her? James growled, his rage barely contained. His eyes flicked to Jojo, seeking permission. Jojo studied him for a moment, noticing the tremor of raw emotion in James's voice. As a newborn vampire, James's emotions were amplified, and Jojo knew that giving in to his anger now would make it harder for him to control himself in the future. Don't worry. Jojo said calmly, stepping forward and placing a hand on James's shoulder. She won't have an easy death. Puff. With a burst of black smoke and sudden flames, Jojo transformed into Ghost Rider. The sight was enough to make James instinctively release his grip on Mania's throat, letting her drop to the ground. But before Mania could even sigh in relief, Ghost Rider's fiery hand clamped around her neck, lifting her back into the air. You will burn for 3 days and 3 nights. The Ghost Rider growled, his voice a haunting rasp that sent shivers through the room. Thud. He slammed her against the wall with terrifying force. Mania screamed in agony as the flames from his hand began to scorch her flesh. Ah! Her wails of pain filled the room, but Ghost Rider was far from finished. Gray. With a bone-chilling roar, Ghost Rider opened his mouth, unleashing a torrent of hellfire that engulfed Mania's body. Her flesh burned slowly, the fire consuming her inch by inch, prolonging her torment. Ghost Rider pulled out a dagger, a cursed weapon he had taken from the creeper during their last battle, and drove it into Mania's chest, pinning her to the wall. The flames continued to devour her, leaving her trapped in unbearable agony. Puff. Let's go. Jojo said as he transformed back into his human form. Without another glance at the burning woman, he began walking toward the door. Freya. Jojo said as they exited the house. Can you cast a spell to block the noise? Freya nodded and began chanting. A moment later, a silence spell enveloped the house, cutting off Mania's shrieks from reaching the outside world. The spell will hold as long as no one enters. Freya informed him, her tone calm and assured. Jojo gave a brief nod of approval, and the group set off, heading toward the Horror Hound Festival now that they had its location. Asterisk. Author's POV. A/N. Thanks for reading the chapter. Please give a review in Power Stone. Chapter 128, Chapter 123, Arrival at Horror Hound Festival. Horror Hound Festival, 9 p.m. After spending some quality time together in their hotel room, Chase and Lane finally arrived at the main event of their trip, the Horror Hound Festival. The moment they stepped inside, Lane's thoughts drifted away from the festival and back to the pregnancy test she had taken earlier in the hotel restroom. She had been feeling strange lately, visions flickering in her mind like unsettling echoes of something she couldn't understand. And now, the test had confirmed it. She was pregnant. She had tried calling Sam, Chase's best friend, to tell him the news and ask for his advice. Sam had gone ahead of them to the festival earlier, and she hoped he could help her figure out how to tell Chase, how to comfort him if he didn't take the news well. After all, Sam and Chase had been close friends for years. If anyone could help ease Chase into the idea of fatherhood, it was him. What Lane didn't know was that Chase had already made plans of his own. He had been waiting for the right moment, planning to make their relationship official with a marriage proposal right here, at the Horror Hound Festival. The festival stretched out before them like a haunted carnival. Towering tents and eerie booths lined the area, casting long shadows beneath the dim glow of Gothic lanterns. A thick blanket of fog crept along the ground, making it difficult to tell where the decorations ended and reality began. Fake corpses hung from nooses, grotesque monsters loomed over the crowd, and eerie whispers played on hidden speakers creating the illusion of being watched. Themed booths offered horror memorabilia, creepy masks, and eerie trinkets that seemed a little too realistic. Lane shivered, hugging herself. There was something off about this place. Something deeply unsettling. But Chase? He was having the time of his life. Dragging her from booth to booth, he eagerly tested out horror-themed games, laughed at the actors in costume, and picked out merchandise completely immersed in the festival's eerie charm. Lane tried to enjoy it too, but the feeling wouldn't go away. And then... a scream. The man with the axe. Ah! Lane's blood ran cold as a man staggered into view, an axe embedded deep in his back. Dark blood oozed from the wound, staining his shirt as he stumbled forward, his eyes wide with pain and terror. He gasped, choking on his breath. Before collapsing onto a table, sending drinks and decorations crashing to the ground. A horrified silence fell over the festival. Lane, Chase, and the surrounding crowd froze in shock. For a moment, no one moved. No one breathed. And then... a medic rushed forward, pushing through the stunned onlookers with his emergency kit in hand. He knelt beside the lifeless man, pressing 2 fingers to his throat, checking for a pulse. The medic's face darkened. He looked up. He's dead. The crowd erupted into panic. People muttered in hushed voices, their eyes darting toward the exits. A few backed away, whispering about leaving before things got worse. Lane gripped Chase's arm, her breath shallow. Something wasn't right. Something felt wrong. And then laughter. Low at first. Then louder. Until the man, the one who had just been declared dead, sat up. His mouth twisted into a grin, his eyes wide with amusement. You guys fell for it. He crowed, throwing his arms up in triumph. The crowd stared in disbelief. Then roars of laughter. Cheers erupted as people clapped and whistled, relieved it was just a prank. Lane exhaled sharply, pressing a hand to her chest. Her heart was still pounding. Chase let out a laugh, shaking his head. Damn, they got us good. He chuckled. Lane forced a smile, but deep down, she couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. That it wasn't just a prank. That this festival was about to become a nightmare. While the festival buzzed with energy, a man stood near the edge of the woods, taking a slow drag from his cigarette. The dim glow of the festival lights barely reached him, casting long shadows that danced between the trees. He had wandered here for a moment of peace, away from the noise, away from the crowd. But in the faint moonlight, something caught his eye, a tree, its trunk wrapped in rusted iron chains. And there a sharp, twisted iron claw, embedded deep in the bark. The man let out a long, tired sigh, exhaling smoke into the cold night air. Let's see, will I be lucky tonight? He muttered, flicking the cigarette to the ground and crushing it under his boot. He turned to head back. And froze. A shadow in the dark. A figure loomed before him. Tall. Massive. Not human. A wave of dread washed over him as he took in the thing's grotesque features, a trench coat draped over its massive frame, concealing unnatural, inhuman limbs. Its face? The man's breath caught in his throat. Wah! Before he could react, the creature lunged. A huge, clawed hand shot forward, wrapping around the man's throat. His feet left the ground as he was lifted, gasping. Then... slam! The monster threw him back against the tree with inhuman force. The impact sent a violent shockwave of pain through his body. But the real horror came next. With a sickening crack, the iron claw embedded in the tree pierced straight through his spine. His mouth opened to scream. But no sound came. Only a shuddering breath as his body twitched against the cold metal. The figure stepped back, tilting its head, like it was examining its work. Then, from beneath its coat, it pulled out a shuriken, a wicked, sharp-edged star, and 2 daggers. With a casual flick, it sent the shuriken spinning through the air. Swoosh! It embedded deep in the man's shoulder. Thud! A dagger followed, sinking into his gut. Another. Straight into his chest. His body twitched, impaled against the tree, his life ebbing away with every agonizing second. A faint, choked gurgle left his lips. And then... silence. The man went limp, his head slumping forward. Dead. The creature tilted its head once more, as if satisfied. Then, without a word, it turned. And disappeared into the shadows. Vroom. Engines rumbled as 2 cars and a truck pulled into the parking lot of the Horror Hound Festival. The vehicles came to a halt, and their passengers stepped out, taking in the lively atmosphere. Jojo and his group had arrived. The crowd seems really lively. Freya's eyes scanned the festival goers, her gaze landing on a group dressed as vampires, their laughter mixing with the eerie music in the background. Seems like this festival is pretty famous. Alice chimed in, eyeing the nearby game booths with clear interest. Jojo noticed her excitement and smirked. She definitely wanted to try her hand at some of those games. Let's go. He nodded toward the festival entrance before turning to Trish and her brother. And you two don't wander off alone. His warning extended to Galen and his granddaughter, who exchanged knowing glances before nodding. With that, they stepped into the festival, blending seamlessly into the crowd. Enjoying the festival, for now. Despite knowing that Creeper's cult members were likely hidden among the crowd, the group remained unfazed. They could handle themselves. So, rather than worry about retaliation, they chose to enjoy the festival. Rosalie and Alice, unable to eat normal human food, veered off toward a game booth, eager to test their skills. Meanwhile, Jojo, Freya, and Leah stopped near a food stall, curiosity piqued by the horror-themed menu. Might as well try something. Jojo purchased a creeper-themed roasted chicken leg, handing portions to Freya and Leah before taking a bite of his own. Leah, smiling in anticipation, sank her teeth into the chicken leg. Freya did the same. Then... silence. Their faces froze mid-chew. A moment passed. Ew! Leah suddenly spat out the bite, her face twisting in disgust. Freya followed suit, her expression filled with pure betrayal. Why does this taste so bland? Her narrowed eyes snapped toward the vendor, who stood behind the counter, arms folded, a smug smirk on his face. Damn! Jojo muttered after taking a bite himself. It's so overcooked the chicken tastes like cardboard. Hee hee. The vendor chuckled. It's creeper-themed roasted chicken. What did you expect? Jojo, Freya, and Leah fell silent, glancing at the crowd around them. To their disbelief, others were happily devouring the very same chicken, glancing at them like they were amateurs. Sigh. Freya exhaled, shaking her head. Leah's expression darkened, a low growl escaping her lips. She leaned in slightly toward Jojo. Should we start with him? Her gaze flickered toward the vendor, a murderous glint flashing in her eyes. Flashback. Before splitting up, Jojo had given everyone a simple directive. I'll signal you whenever I sense someone whose sins weigh as heavily as the antique shop owner we visited earlier. His ability to sense sins was invaluable in identifying Creeper's cult members, who had blended into the festival crowd. On their way here, Jojo had subtly pointed out individuals whose aura reeked of sins, marking them as potential cultists. In response, the group spread out, each keeping an eye on those marked targets. Flashback ends. Thud. The attention of the crowd shifted as one of the festival's main events was about to begin. A large stage had been set, its eerie decorations and flickering torches adding to the festival's dark atmosphere. People gathered, excited murmurs filling the air. Jojo saw his chance. He subtly signaled Freya, who immediately activated her magic. Boom! The shop vendor was suddenly launched off his feet, his body slamming into a wooden wall behind him. Caught completely off guard, the man let out a grunt before collapsing against the planks, dazed. Without hesitation, Jojo, Freya, and Leah stepped into the booth and shut the entrance behind them, cutting off prying eyes. The festival noise outside masked any sounds inside. Without waiting for questions, Leah moved forward, her eyes scanning the unconscious vendor's arm. There it was. The mark. A creeper's shuriken tattoo was etched onto the man's wrist, confirming his allegiance to the cult. SCHHK. In a single fluid motion, Leah slit his throat. Blood spilled over the wooden floor. A sharp ringing tone cut through the air. Jojo tapped his earpiece, connecting to the conference call with the others. Everyone, we've confirmed it. This guy had the creeper's mark. There was a brief pause. Then came Klaus' voice, accompanied by the distinct splashing sound of blood. Yet, I just noticed the same thing. It was confirmed. The group had already eliminated 15 cult members, each identified by the symbolic tattoo of the shuriken. A voice echoed through the festival speakers. Now. It's time for tonight's main event, an exclusive experience, available only to the chosen lucky ones. The festival host, who had been overseeing the various events from drama to dance to eerie singing performances, smirked. Something in her expression glinted with mystery and malice. The air grew thick, the festival's cheerful horror shifting into something far more sinister. Asterisk. Author's POV. A/N. Thanks for reading the chapter. Please give a review and Power Stone. Chapter 129, Chapter 124, Creepers Finale 1. The stage, which had earlier hosted several performances, was suddenly interrupted as the host spoke in a mysterious tone, announcing the main event of the festival. Behind her, 3 individuals stood, seemingly engaged in a tense conversation. After receiving a signal from the host, a fat man with a long beard stepped forward, holding a glass fishbowl shaped like a pumpkin, filled with numerous cards. Now, it's time to choose the chosen ones. The grand prize is Barnabet House. A smirk appeared on the host's face as she gestured to the woman standing beside the fat man, urging her to draw a card from the bowl to select the lucky winners who would experience the grand prize. As she made the announcement, the screen behind her displayed an eerie image of an old house, enhanced by special effects that gave it a haunted appearance. The event name flickered in bold, ghostly letters across the screen. With that, the selection process began. Shake shake. The fat man reached into the glass bowl, pulled out a single card, and adjusted his spectacles to read the number. Number 514. He announced loudly, holding up the card for the audience to see. Oh! Boo! A mix of cheers and disappointment erupted from the crowd. Some clapped and encouraged the lucky winner, while others booed playfully, frustrated that they hadn't been chosen. Oh my god! It's me, but how is this possible? I never. Lane stared at the matching number on her card in shock. She hadn't even entered her name for the creeper-themed escape house. Before she could voice her confusion, Chase cut her off mid-sentence. All right, baby. 514 is us. Grinning excitedly, Chase shot his hand into the air and shouted toward the event organizers, claiming their unexpected win. Clap clap. The audience responded with cheers and applause, encouraging the couple to take the stage. Lane hesitated, her words catching in her throat as she turned to Chase. He looked as excited as a kid on Christmas morning. With a sigh, she swallowed her doubts and let him pull her along toward the stage. Meanwhile, Jojo's eyes narrowed as he exchanged a glance with Klaus, who was positioned near the couple. "It's her. She's the one the creeper is after," Alice murmured discreetly, her voice barely audible as she pulled Jojo closer. Her sharp gaze never left Lane and Chase, who were now following the host backstage. Jojo gave a small nod in response before subtly signaling Klaus again, confirming their suspicions. Klaus's expression darkened slightly, but he nodded in understanding. Without a word, he slipped into the shadows, quietly following the couple. Backstage, he observed as a small film crew assembled by the event organizers set up cameras to record the couple's experience inside the creeper-themed escape house, making them the first participants of the night. Little did they know, they weren't just entering an attraction. They were walking straight into a trap. Both Lane and Chase were mingling with the crew, but one could tell Lane was burning with jealousy. Across from her, Carrie was openly flirting with Chase, laughing at his jokes and playfully touching his arm. Chase, who was completely oblivious, continued chatting excitedly with her, discussing his expectations for the creeper-themed escape house. Thud. While Klaus stood near the entrance, keeping an eye on the crew, someone suddenly bumped into him. _______. Sorry, man. I'm in a hurry. A tall, lean man with a camera in one hand smiled apologetically, adjusting his grip on the equipment. Noticing the camera, Klaus immediately understood this was the influencer the crew had been waiting for. A dangerous idea flickered through his mind. Glare. With a subtle smirk, Klaus compelled the influencer, his voice smooth and commanding. "You're exhausted. Go to your room and get some rest." The light in the influencer's eyes dimmed, his expression turning vacant. Without hesitation, he handed over the camera to Klaus and started walking away, leaving the tent in a dazed state. Sigh. Who would have thought I'd end up as a cameraman? Klaus muttered, examining the camera in his hand before casually making his way toward the crew, seamlessly blending in. Outside, Jojo and the others regrouped at the edge of the crowd, discussing their next move. They had finally identified the girl Creeper was after. Meanwhile, the stage crew was busy preparing for the next event, a DJ performance. Workers moved frantically, setting up lighting rigs and sound equipment. "I just got word from Klaus he's infiltrated the crew, disguised as the influencer," Freya informed the group, her expression neutral. Pfft! Jojo couldn't hold back his laughter, and a moment later, Elijah joined in, clearly amused by their brother's latest stunt. The idea of Klaus pretending to be an influencer holding a camera, engaging with an audience, and attempting to create content was just too ridiculous. "Since Freya can track Klaus in case we lose sight of the van, let's follow them," Jojo said, shaking his head with an amused smirk before his expression turned serious once more. He had no doubt. The van was heading straight for Creeper's hideout where his true body was waiting. Boom! Just as they were about to leave the Horror Hound Festival, a loud crash echoed through the venue. Underscore 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 underscore. Underscore 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 underscore. Underscore 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 underscore. The lights flickered violently before shutting off completely. For a brief moment, silence fell over the festival. People glanced around in confusion, wondering why the DJ had suddenly stopped playing. Cough. Everybody. It's time for the electrifying beat. The DJ's voice boomed through the speakers as he switched to backup power, flooding the area with flashing neon lights and blasting a new song. The crowd quickly forgot the disruption, throwing their hands up and dancing as if nothing had happened. But for Jojo and his group, it was a different story. They had heard the crash clearly, their enhanced hearing picking up the disturbance even over the loud music. James, still a newbie, winced in discomfort, his senses overwhelmed by the blaring bass and flashing lights. Jojo's gaze darkened. "Let's go." Without hesitation, he hurried toward the source of the noise, determined to uncover what had caused the explosion. Something wasn't right. And he had a bad feeling about it. When they arrived, they saw it the same old rusted truck that the creeper used. But this time, it had crashed into a signal tower and a nearby transformer, sparks still flickering from the damaged metal. Holy shit, it's him! Derry's breath hitched as he stared at the all-too-familiar vehicle. He would never forget that truck, no matter how many years passed. Click! A clicking sound echoed through the tense silence. Underscore. The door of the damaged truck creaked open. And then the creeper stepped out. But the moment its predatory eyes locked onto Jojo, it froze. For the first time, the monster hesitated. Oh my god! Addison staggered backward, her face pale with fear. She had seen the creeper before when it attacked the school bus, but this was different. Up close, the grotesque details of its face, the inhuman hunger in its eyes, made her shudder. Underscore. But Galen was different. She didn't flinch. Instead, her gaze burned with hatred. This monster was the reason her son was dead. The cause of so much suffering. She wanted nothing more than to tear it apart, to make it suffer the way she had. Without wasting time, the creeper lunged, yanking open the truck's door and reaching for the massive hammer inside. Puff! But it never got the chance. With a burst of hellfire, Jojo transformed. The Ghost Rider stood where Jojo had been, his body wreathed in flames of vengeance, his skull burning like a beacon of death. Thud! In a flash, he closed the distance, slamming the truck door shut with a brutal kick, trapping the creeper's hand inside. Ah! The creeper let out a piercing shriek, its fingers crushed between the rusted metal. With burning eyes, it snarled in rage, swinging its free elbow toward the Ghost Rider's flaming skull. Thud! But Ghost Rider was faster. He blocked the strike effortlessly and slammed the creeper's head into the truck with brute force. Screech! He didn't stop there. He dragged the creeper's face across the jagged rusted metal, the sharp edges tearing through its flesh as it thrashed in pain. Die! Ray! With a furious roar, Ghost Rider grabbed the creeper's head, forcing it onto its knees. The hellfire in his hands flared, its searing heat consuming the monster's face. Ah! The creeper screamed as its flesh burned away, its body twitching violently before finally collapsing lifeless. Its head crumbled into ashes. Ray! Ghost Rider threw his head back and unleashed a blast of hellfire, incinerating the creeper's puppet body until nothing remained but smoldering embers. Puff! With a final burst of black smoke, the flames died down, and Jojo returned to his human form. There was no time to celebrate. They still had a bigger mission. Without hesitation, the group rushed back to their car, following the fading tire tracks left behind by the van, the one heading straight for the horror-themed escape house. The place where Creeper's true form was waiting. And this time, they were going to end it. Asterisk. Author's POV. A/N. Thanks for reading the chapter. Please give a review and Power Stone. Chapter 130, Chapter 125, Creepers Finale 2. After 15 minutes, the van rumbled to a stop, its tires kicking up dust as it rolled to a halt. Inside, Lane and Chase sat along with the rest of the crew, including Klaus, who had quietly blended in. At the wheel was Stu, one of the game booth owners. The same man who had handled the creeper's shuriken earlier. "All right, folks. We're here," Stu announced, tapping the steering wheel with enthusiasm. Sigh. Finally. With a huff of relief, Lane was the first to step out of the van. Annoyance was etched all over her face. She had spent the last 15 minutes gritting her teeth while Carrie shamelessly flirted with Chase right in front of her. And Chase? That idiot didn't even realize it. If she had stayed in that van a second longer, she would have slapped Carrie into next week. Noticing Lane's swift exit, Chase hurriedly followed her out, while the rest of the crew climbed out one by one. Before them stood a towering, rusted iron gate. Beyond it, A cemetery. A thick, ghostly fog curled around the weathered tombstones, making it nearly impossible to see more than a few feet ahead. The sight alone sent a chill down their spines. This is awesome! Carrie's eyes sparkled with excitement as she took in the eerie surroundings. Yeah, it looks cool. Chase chimed in, grinning as he helped Carrie steady herself after she almost slipped. ________. Lane watched the exchange, her eye twitching in pure irritation. She didn't even want to be here. The only reason she had agreed to this stupid trip was for Chase. But now? Instead of paying attention to her, that idiot boyfriend of hers was too busy entertaining that bitch Carrie. She clenched her fists. This night was not off to a good start. Meanwhile, Klaus remained quiet, his sharp eyes scanning the fog-covered graveyard. And then his expression darkened. I smell blood. The others couldn't see through the mist, but he could. Hidden among the gravestones and trees, several figures stood motionless. Dressed in black robes, faces concealed, they lurked at different vantage points, blending seamlessly into the fog. They were watching. And waiting. Klaus's gaze flicked from one figure to another, his mind racing. Who were they? And more importantly, what were they planning? Cough. A sudden cough broke the silence. Stu, standing near the van, cleared his throat, drawing their attention. Welcome to Barnabet Family Cemetery, he announced, his voice taking on a dramatic tone. The final resting place of souls from the 1700s. He let the words sink in before continuing. The natives once believed this was sacred land, a place of great spiritual power. But over time, its history became darker. They say it is very, very haunted. As he spoke, Chase and Carrie listened eagerly, their excitement undeterred. But the others? They were barely paying attention. Everyone else was too preoccupied with their own thoughts, suspicions, and fears. And Klaus? His attention wasn't on the ghost stories. His eyes remained locked on the hidden figures lurking in the mist. Because he knew something was very wrong. Stu finished his monotonous speech, his expression unfazed, just another part of his job. I wonder if I'd be buried here. Chuckle. Rubbing her hands together, Carrie whispered playfully to Chase. Chase chuckled in response. Be careful what you wish for. With a mischievous grin, he whispered back. _______. But Lane? Her mood darkened further. Her boyfriend and this bitch Carrie were building up chemistry right before her eyes. While Klaus was keeping a close eye on the shadowy figures lurking in the fog, a voice pulled him back to reality. Hey, man, let's start recording. The host, standing beside him, held a mic in one hand, ready to begin. Klaus turned, silent for a few seconds, then clicked his tongue in annoyance. Without a word, he powered on the camera. _______. Only. It didn't turn on. Where's the escape room, man? The host turned to Stu, looking visibly confused. Why were they standing in a cemetery, getting a history lesson, instead of heading to the escape house? Well, it's here. You need to walk through the graveyard to reach Barnabet House. Stu's deadpan response was far from reassuring. Okay, man. Are you ready? The host nodded, then turned back to Klaus, who was still fidgeting with the camera. _______. No. Camera's not working. Klaus said flatly, shaking his head. You gotta be kidding me. Right. The host's face twisted in frustration. All my preparation is gonna be wasted cause of your stupid camera. Damn it. I should have never agreed to do this with some amateur newbie as my cameraman. His voice rose with anger, drawing the attention of a few crew members. Growl. A low, rumbling growl escaped Klaus's lips. His cold, piercing gaze locked onto the host. The host, irritated beyond belief, sneered. "What the hell are you staring at, hey?" he scoffed, crossing his arms. "Don't think I'll pity you just cause you're standing there looking all moody. Get lost. I don't wanna see your stupid face." Growl. Klaus's eyes darkened, his expression unreadable. "Then. You're a pole dancer. Go and give your performance at every grave." The words were whispered low and deadly, just loud enough for the host to hear. And then, his mind twisted. His reality shifted. The host now truly believed without a shadow of doubt that he was a professional pole dancer. With unwavering confidence, he turned to face the graveyard and began his performance. Suddenly, the light in the host's eyes dimmed, and he began strutting through the graveyard, his hips swaying seductively. Underscore 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 underscore. Underscore 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 underscore. Underscore 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 underscore. Everyone present froze. Silence. Men exchanged puzzled glances, their faces twisted in confusion. Why was he moving like that? Snort. Klaus only snorted, utterly unimpressed, before turning his attention back to the hidden figures lurking in the fog. Meanwhile, Lane had had enough. Her patience was gone. Seeing her boyfriend continue chatting with that bitch Carrie, she turned on her heel and stormed through the graveyard entrance. "Lane, wait! I'm coming!" "Lane!" Chase quickly scrambled after her, calling out as he tried to catch up. But as Chase focused on consoling his jealous girlfriend, neither of them realized they weren't the only ones watching. High above, on a small slope near the graveyard, a pair of cold, predatory eyes gleamed under the full moonlight. The creeper. His gaze locked onto the couple below, eyes honed in on Lane more specifically. Her belly. Then, his eyes shifted to the other humans wandering through the cemetery. Future meals. Underscore 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 underscore. But when his gaze landed on Klaus, he froze. Memories flooded back. This man was with the monster who had hunted him down, again and again. Grumble. A low, irritated snarl escaped the creeper's lips. Then, without hesitation he leapt from the slope. Sigh. Klaus exhaled, barely acknowledging the creeper's presence. He had already marked the locations of the cult members hiding in the fog. While the crew continued blindly following Stu, stepping deeper into the graveyard, Klaus moved. Swish! In a blur, Klaus vanished from where he stood. What the fuck is he doing? A cult member, hidden behind a gravestone, grumbled under his breath. His disguise was perfect, but at that moment, something else caught his attention. The host. The very man they had planted to lead the crew into their trap was now pole dancing in front of his hiding spot. What the hell? Squelch! A sharp pain bloomed in his chest. Eyes wide, he looked down. A hand had pierced through him, holding his still beating heart. His vision blurred. Darkness swallowed him whole. Before his lifeless body could even hit the ground, Klaus had already moved to the next target. 3 cult members stood together, whispering they never saw him coming. Snap! 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 3 broken necks. 3 bodies collapsed into the dirt. Not a single scream. Only the soft thud of corpses hitting the ground. Meanwhile, a black car pulled up to the cemetery gates. Jojo and his group had arrived. Sigh. Jacob stepped out, inhaling deeply. His face darkened. I can already smell blood. Jojo's expression remained stoic. Let's go, guys. James, Leah, Rosalie, you 3 stay here and keep an eye on Trish and the others. The 3 nodded, knowing their role was crucial. If the creeper realized the survivors were left unguarded, it would slaughter them without hesitation. Jojo turned, his eyes glowing in the moonlight. Elijah, Freya, Jacob, let's move. With that they stepped into the graveyard. ****Author's POV. A/N Thanks for reading the chapter. Please give a review in Power Stone. Chapter 131, Chapter 126, Creepers Finale 3. Barnabette Family Cemetery. With serious expressions, Jojo, Elijah, and Jacob stepped into the fog-covered cemetery, their senses sharp and their guard raised. The stench of blood hung thick in the air, a strong, unmistakable scent. And they knew, without a doubt, it was human blood. They moved forward cautiously, passing through the dense fog along a worn path leading to the old Barnabette family mansion. Then, their eyes landed on something grim. Several bodies lay scattered along the path, lifeless and drenched in pools of blood. A heavy sigh broke the silence. Klaus, looks like he wasn't in a good mood. Examining the wound patterns on the corpses, Elijah sighed in resignation, casually nudging one of the dead bodies with his boot. Ah! A piercing scream echoed through the fog, making all three of them tense up instantly. Roar! The deep, guttural roar that followed sent a chill down their spines. A knowing look passed between them before they dashed toward the source of the scream. Because they recognized that roar. They had faced it before. It could only belong to Creeper. The three arrived at the entrance of the mansion, its weathered stone walls barely visible through the mist. Suddenly, boom! A massive figure crashed into the stone wall, sending chunks of rock tumbling down, burying it beneath the rubble. Creeper! Fuck, he almost fooled me. A voice, calm yet irritated, cut through the scene. From the other side of the wreckage, Klaus emerged, unbothered, dragging his feet forward. Behind him, Lane, Chase, and Clary followed, their faces pale with lingering fear. Blood dripped from Klaus' chest, where two daggers were embedded, one directly over his heart, the other near his lung. At his feet lay the mangled corpse of the guide who had brought Leo and the others here, one arm missing, half his head gone, drowning in a pool of his own blood. Worry and amusement. Klaus, are you all right? Stepping forward, Freya's face twisted in concern as she examined the daggers lodged in his chest. Klaus arched an eyebrow. Why do I get the feeling you're underestimating me? With an annoyed scoff, he gripped the dagger's end. Ripped them out. Blood gushed for a brief moment before the wounds closed rapidly, his skin knitting itself together as if they never existed. A weary sigh came from Jojo as he stepped closer, relieved yet frustrated. Good, you're all right. Looks like we were a second too late. Klaus smirked, shaking his head. Nat, it's only been 5 minutes since we entered the Barnabette cemetery. Flashback. 5 minutes earlier. While Klaus was busy eliminating the cult members lurking in the shadows waiting for the perfect moment to strike at Lane and the others, something far more sinister descended upon them. Creeper had found its prey. Spreading its massive, leathery wings, the nightmarish creature swooped down from the darkened sky, its piercing gaze locked onto its next victim. This time, the target was Stu, a man with a strong, healthy physique, yet still weaker compared to Klaus. For some reason, when Creeper had tried to sniff out Klaus, it felt an overwhelming sense of disgust, as if the mere scent of him was repulsive beyond reason. Without hesitation, it ignored Klaus entirely, turning its full attention to Stu instead. Ah! With one swift motion, Creeper descended, its clawed hand gripping Stu's collar before launching back into the air. You are... Crack! Before Stu could even finish his sentence, a sickening snap echoed through the night, his neck broken in an instant. Instead of soaring into the sky, Creeper landed gracefully atop the mansion's ceiling, clutching the lifeless body in its grasp. And then, it began feeding. Blood dripped onto the stone floor below as Creeper's piercing eyes flickered toward Lane, Chase, and Clary, who had heard the scream but were now surrounded by a chilling silence. They turned in every direction, scanning for any sign of Stu. Nothing. The only trace left behind was the lantern he had been carrying, now lying abandoned on the ground. Where did he go? Could this be another cheap scare tactic by the event organizers? Clary's voice carried a tone of skepticism, dismissing the eerie disappearance as just another part of the horror attraction. After all, they were inside a haunted escape house. Nod. Yeah, there's a huge chance it's staged. Chase, ever the thrill-seeker, nodded enthusiastically, his lips curling into an excited grin. Then, mockingly, he shouted into the darkness. Hey, buddies! I'm so scared. His sarcasm echoed through the quiet night, taunting the so-called event organizers who, in his mind, were just trying to mess with them. Even a child wouldn't fall for these outdated tricks. Clary joined in, laughing as she called out to the supposed actors, her grin wide and self-assured. No matter how much Lane tried to ignore it, she could clearly see how Clary's flirtatious gaze lingered on Chase. It was obvious. She was hitting on him. Blatantly. And Chase? He was too dense to even notice. With an irritated scoff, Lane spun on her heels, deciding she'd had enough. Forget them. She stepped forward, determined to enter the mansion alone. Drib. Drib. Just as she took a few steps, something cold and wet landed on her shoulder. She froze. Slowly, she reached up, her fingers brushing against the damp spot. Her hand trembled as she brought it into view. A dark red stain coated her fingertips. Blood. Her heart pounded violently against her ribcage. She opened her mouth to call out to Chase. But then, she remembered his earlier words, dismissing everything strange that had happened so far. It's all scripted by the event organizers. Sigh. A slow exhale escaped her lips, her nerves settling, or so she thought. She tilted her head upward, ready to mock whoever was pulling this cheap trick. Then, she saw it. And froze. Her entire body went rigid. Her breath hitched. Her blood ran cold. Above her, Creeper stared down, its grotesque mouth smeared with fresh blood, its claws buried in the half-eaten corpse of Stu. And it was still watching her. Perched atop the mansion's ceiling, Creeper continued devouring its prey. Stu. What was left of him was barely recognizable. Half of his face was missing. Underscore 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 underscore. Underscore 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 underscore. Chase, noticing that Lane had gone silent, turned toward her. Clary, rolling her eyes in irritation, followed suit. It seems we have a cry. Her mocking words died in her throat as her gaze followed Lane's upward stare. And landed on the horrific sight of the monster feasting on Stu's corpse. Grr. A low growl rumbled from Creeper's throat. Its gaze locked onto Lane's stomach. And without warning, it lunged. Straight for her. She froze in place. Chase did too. Thud. Before Creeper's claws could sink into her flesh, a blur of motion cut through the darkness. Claws. His foot collided with Creeper's ribs, the force sending the monster hurtling through the air. And crashing through the glass windows of the old mansion. Stay behind me. Klaus's voice was cold and authoritative, his eyes never leaving the shattered window. Lane, Chase, and Clary, terrified and shaken, obeyed without hesitation. Roar. A furious snarl tore through the air as Creeper emerged from the wreckage, glass shards sliding from its bloodied body. Its hatred for Klaus burned bright in its eyes. Hello, buddy. Nice to meet you. Klaus's lips curled into a mischievous grin, a dangerous glint flashing in his eyes. I'm a big fan of your art. Creeper paused. For just a split second, confusion flickered across its monstrous face. And that was all the opening Klaus needed. Swish! Two daggers gleaming and razor-sharp hurtled through the air, aimed directly at Klaus's chest. In an instant, he dodged, his body disappearing from the spot. At the same time, he shoved Lane, Chase, and Clary aside, knocking them safely to the ground. The daggers embedded themselves deep into the stone wall behind them. Thud! Before Creeper could react, Klaus struck. A punch slammed into its face. Followed by a right hook. then a left. Each impact sent a shockwave through Creeper's body, its head snapping from side to side. "Oh, man! You're pretty sturdy." Klaus's voice was mocking, his tone laced with amusement. Snarl! Creeper, enraged, gritted its razor-sharp teeth. With a vicious snarl, it ripped another dagger from its trench coat and swung it, aiming straight for Klaus's neck. But Klaus was too fast. Each of Creeper's slashes cut through empty air, unable to land a single hit. Yet Creeper remained relentless. It knew if it could land just one attack, just one deep cut, Klaus would be finished. But Klaus wasn't playing along. He had already noticed the shift in Creeper's expression. The rage. The hatred. And now fear. Well, well. Looks like he's here. Klaus smirked. Creeper's eyes widened slightly. It could hear them approaching. Someone else was coming. Someone dangerous. But before it could react, Klaus moved. With inhuman precision, Klaus's foot connected with Creeper's knee. A sickening crack echoed through the air as the monster collapsed, kneeling from the force. In the same instant, Klaus's fist shot forward, slamming straight into Creeper's chest. His goal? To tear through the ribcage and rip out its heart. But Creeper wasn't done yet. It took advantage of the close proximity and plunged its dagger deep into Klaus's chest. Boom! Blood spattered onto the stone floor. Creeper's blade had pierced through Klaus's flesh, but Klaus's fist had reached its heart. Ah! Lane and Clary screamed in horror. But Klaus simply grinned. With a powerful strike, he sent Creeper flying backward, the impact smashing it into the stone wall. Flashback ends. Roar! A thunderous snarl erupted from Creeper's throat as it rose from the rubble, stone fragments tumbling from its mangled body. Its glowing eyes locked onto Jojo and pure hatred burned within them. "This guy's skin is as resilient as a damn cockroach." Klaus sneered, watching Creeper struggle. His expression? Mocking. The kind that said, "I'm impressed, but not really." Creeper's face twisted in rage. But before it could retaliate, puff! A burst of hellfire ignited behind Klaus. And in its wake Jojo transformed. His body engulfed in flames, his flesh stripped away, leaving only a burning skull in its place. Finally! I can deal with you. For the first time, Creeper hesitated. It took a step back. Then another. Underscore. Panic flickered in its monstrous eyes. And without a second thought it turned to flee. Its wings unfurled, ready to take to the skies. But nothing. No matter how hard it flapped, it couldn't lift off. Its body refused to ascend. And then it felt it. A cold grip, tight and unyielding, wrapped around its ankle. Slowly, Creeper turned back. Ghost Rider. Standing still. Watching quietly. His flaming fingers locked around Creeper's leg like an executioner's grip. "It's time to end this." Without another word, Ghost Rider yanked Creeper downward. And slammed it into the ground. Hard. The impact shattered the earth beneath them. Creeper choked, the air crushed from its lungs. But Ghost Rider wasn't finished. Not yet. With a savage roar, he tore into Creeper's arms, ripping them clean from its body. A sickening squelch filled the air. Blood gushed, painting the ground black. Creeper's eyes bulged, its mouth stretching wide in a silent scream of horror before. The pain hit. Ga ga ga. A distorted, choked laugh gurgled from Ghost Rider. Then, with one hand, he seized Creeper by the throat. The monster thrashed violently, its tail whipping and legs kicking. But it was helpless. Hopeless. Its end was near. "Look into my eyes." Ghost Rider's voice was low, haunting, dripping with temptation and doom. Creeper's body convulsed, struggling to resist. It knew. It felt it. The danger. The abyss. Every fiber of its being screamed, "Don't look!" But it was too late. No matter how hard it fought. No matter how hard it resisted, the abyss called. And it answered. Creeper's gaze snapped upward. And it saw. A blood-curdling scream of agony erupted from its lips. Its soul ignited, burning from the inside out. The penance stare had claimed another sinner. Asterisk. Author's POV. A/N. Thanks for reading the chapter. Please give a review in Power Stone. Chapter 132, Chapter 127, Surprise News. Ghost Rider tightened his grip around the struggling creeper's throat, his hollow, burning eyes locked onto the monster's own. The penance stare was in full force. Creeper thrashed violently, its wings flailing, but the iron grip of death held firm. Ghost Rider's jaw opened, releasing a bone-chilling roar that echoed through the cemetery. What is he doing? Klaus arched a brow, watching Creeper's tortured expression. Its contorted face screamed in agony, as if suffering through something far worse than physical pain. Elijah, equally intrigued, turned to Freya, waiting for an answer. He had seen this ability before when Jojo used it on Greta, but watching it again only deepened his curiosity. Freya, never taking her eyes off Ghost Rider, finally spoke. It's one of his abilities. Her voice was low, calm, but carried a weight of understanding. According to him, this power forces the victim to experience every sin they've ever committed, reliving it in the cruelest, most unbearable way until their very soul collapses under the burden. Klaus and Elijah exchanged looks, their expressions shifting from intrigue to awe as the realization sank in. Who are you people? The panicked voice of Chase interrupted their conversation. His entire body trembled, sweat dripping from his forehead as he pointed at Ghost Rider. What is that thing? And what the hell is that monster? His eyes darted to Creeper, still trapped in the fiery grip, his mind unable to process what he was witnessing. Lane and Clary weren't any better. Lane clutched her chest, trying to control her breathing, while Clary stood pale and stiff, her lips trembling. They had just watched their guide, Stu, get devoured. Now, another inhuman monster was being burned alive before them. Quiet. Freya sighed, her irritation clear. Without another word, she cast a spell and instantly, the three collapsed to the ground, falling unconscious. Creeper's screams weakened. Its once violent struggles slowed. Until it stopped moving altogether. Its charred, blackened eyes stared into nothingness. The penance stare had done its work. But the punishment didn't end there. A dark, eerie stillness settled over the corpse. The souls it had devoured for centuries now turned against it. For the first time, Creeper felt their pain. Their sins, the burdens of their suffering, all crashed down onto its own soul. And Creeper paid the price. Thud. Ghost Rider dropped the lifeless body to the ground. Then, he roared victoriously, placing one flaming boot on Creeper's corpse. And then the body began to change. A dark cocoon-like structure wrapped around Creeper's remains. But instead of silk, it was made of hellfire. The flames spread hungrily, consuming everything: skin, bones, even the very essence of what Creeper once was. The air filled with the sickening sound of cracking flesh and hissing embers. And then, puff! With a final burst of black smoke, Creeper was gone. Burned to nothing. Jojo sighed. A puff of smoke escaped his lips as the hellfire receded, his form shifting back to normal. The Ghost Rider was gone. In his place, just Jojo. His muscles tensed, and he rolled his shoulders, an odd discomfort settling over him. Something felt off. Klaus, Elijah. Jojo exhaled, rubbing his shoulder. Can you enter the mansion? Nod. Elijah gave a curious glance at the old mansion before him, then with a slight nod, he reached for the door. It was unlocked, no need to use force. With a faint creak, the door swung open. But the moment he tried to step inside, thud! An invisible force stopped him in his tracks. It was as if an unseen wall blocked the entrance. Elijah frowned. He pressed forward, testing the resistance, but no matter how much he tried, he couldn't move past the threshold. Nah, looks like the owner of this place is still alive. Elijah turned toward Jojo, shaking his head. If the mansion's owner were dead, he should have been able to enter. But the fact that he couldn't meant someone the true owner was still out there, alive. I eliminated all the cult members here. Klaus crossed his arms, narrowing his eyes. One of them even confirmed that every last member was present today. There shouldn't be anyone left alive. His tone was firm. Certain. He had personally hunted them down, ensured their deaths. So if the cult members were truly wiped out, who was the owner? Maybe the owner wasn't aware of all this. Freya pondered for a moment, then shrugged. It was possible. The mansion had been abandoned for a long time, perhaps Creeper had chosen it because of that. Maybe the true owner had no idea of the horrors that took place here. Since Elijah and Klaus couldn't enter the mansion, they stayed outside. Meanwhile, Jojo, Freya, and Jacob stepped inside, carefully scanning the interior. The air was thick with dust and stale decay. Wooden beams creaked under the weight of time. The walls were covered in cryptic symbols, their meanings lost to the untrained eye. Their mission was clear: find anything that could explain the dimension Creeper came from. A clue. A relic. Something. But after a thorough search of the entire mansion, they came up empty-handed. Except for one thing. At the center of the main hall, they found a massive stone slab. Carved into its surface a pregnant woman, her hands and legs bound tightly, as if trapped in eternal suffering. And above her the Creeper, its dagger poised, plunging into her swollen belly. The markings around the slab suggested one thing: a sacrificial ritual. A horrifying incantation meant for something far worse. Jojo, Freya, and Jacob stared at the chilling depiction. A grim realization settled over them. The answers they sought might be darker than they imagined. Sigh. Let's destroy this thing, and the wall. With a defeated sigh, Jojo picked up a large sledgehammer from one of the storage rooms. His grip tightened as he swung with full force, smashing the ancient symbols and writings related to Creeper. If left intact, some fool might attempt the ritual for fun and unknowingly summon another demon from the dimension Creeper came from. Boom! With each mighty swing, the old walls crumbled, dust and debris raining down as Jojo obliterated the markings. Freya, watching closely, noticed something off. Jojo seemed uncomfortable. Like something was bothering him. Is something wrong, Jojo? Narrowing her eyes, Freya stepped forward and casually placed a hand on Jojo's shoulder. Ah! Jojo suddenly yelped, recoiling in pain as he clutched his shoulder. Are you hurt? Let me see. Genuine concern filled Freya's voice. She reached for Jojo's shirt, carefully lifting the fabric to inspect his back. What she saw made her eyes darken. 2 red patches burned into his spinal cord and shoulder blades. The skin looked inflamed, as if something unnatural had caused it. _______. Freya pressed a finger against the irritated skin. Jojo flinched hard, gritting his teeth in pain. That confirmed it. This was the source of his discomfort. Sigh. It looks like your body is sore. Freya muttered. You should ice it to help with the pain. Her tone was relieved. It wasn't a serious injury, just exhaustion catching up to him. Jojo simply nodded, still feeling the dull ache in his back. With the Creeper's threat eliminated, Jojo and the others ensured the safety of Trish, her brother, and Galen's granddaughter. Before parting, they gave them a business card, one that read, DMC Devil May Cry. Forks. With their mission complete, Jojo and his group returned to Forks. At the same time, Klaus and Elijah departed for New Orleans. Their sister was happy here, and they didn't want to disrupt her new life. When Jojo and the others arrived back in Forks, they were greeted with news that stunned them all. Alice, however, was smirking at their reactions. "What's wrong? You all look like you've seen a ghost." "The news? Bella was pregnant. And the father? The ever-brooding Edward Cullen." Rosalie stared, her expression frozen in disbelief. Her brother, the one who constantly preached about how he would never turn Bella into a cold one. The same Edward who had once tried to avoid her had gotten her pregnant. _______. Edward, feeling Rosalie's sharp gaze, knew exactly what she was thinking. And yet, he had no words. Snort. "Damn!" Rosalie scoffed. "Edward, just turn her already. If you don't, things will only get more complicated." She crossed her arms, glaring at her brother. To her surprise, Edward merely snorted, clearly unamused. Bella, standing beside Edward, was watching him intently, waiting. Hoping. Though she hadn't openly admitted it, she wanted to be turned into a vampire. But Edward was against it. Reluctant. Hesitant. Refusing to even consider it. And deep down, Bella couldn't shake the feeling that he was underestimating her. ***. Author's POV. A/N. Thanks for reading the chapter. Please give a review in Power Stone. Chapter 133, Chapter 128, The Heroes of Our Kind. Cullen's Mansion. The Cullens were gathered in a tense discussion, still debating how to handle the complicated situation regarding Bella's pregnancy. To them, this was an unprecedented crisis, one that violated one of the strict, unbreakable rules followed by the Cold Ones. No romantic relationships with humans who have not been turned. And now, things had spiraled into something even more dangerous. If the Volturi got wind of this situation, they would not turn a blind eye. There was a very real chance that they would intervene, and perhaps even go as far as to destroy their entire coven. Jojo, who had been listening silently, perked up at one particular detail. Arrow, the Volturi leader, had always been interested in Alice's ability to see glimpses of the future. He had tried multiple times to recruit her into the Volturi, but the Cullens had firmly refused, knowing the danger that came with associating with them. Despite their rejection, they had earned the enmity of the Volturi, making them even more vulnerable now. If this is a problem, why don't we just destroy them? Jojo's voice cut through the tension in the room. His expression remained calm, though a slight raise of his eyebrows showed his curiosity. ________________________ Sigh. The room fell into a heavy silence. The Cullens exchanged uneasy glances, clearly disturbed by Jojo's casual suggestion. After a moment, Rosalie let out a defeated sigh, shaking her head. The Volturi are seen as the heroes of our kind, touching them isn't simple. If we so much as lay a finger on them, many covens who worship them would take offense and come after us. Breaking the silence, Edward spoke, his expression grave. He knew better than anyone how deeply ingrained the Volturi's rule was within the vampire world. Let's keep this matter under wraps until the child is born. Carlyle, who had been listening quietly, finally stood from his seat. Walking toward Edward, he placed a firm hand on his shoulder. After that, Edward, you have no choice. You must turn Bella into a cold one whether you want to or not. His tone was calm but final. Without waiting for a response, he turned and left the room. ____________. Edward wanted to protest, but the moment he read Carlyle's mind, he froze. Carlyle wasn't forcing him, he was genuinely worried about Bella and their unborn child. The rest of the Cullens remained silent, not interfering, because deep down, they all knew Bella's transformation could no longer be delayed. Even Emmett, usually the first to crack a joke, stayed quiet. Grit. Swoosh. Edward stood still for a few moments, fists clenched. Then, gritting his teeth, he vanished from the mansion in a blur, his agility allowing him to disappear into the night. After discussing things with the Cullens, Jojo also left, while Rosalie and Alice decided to stay behind to support Bella, who looked distraught. Since Jojo's bike was back at his mansion, he borrowed Rosalie's car for the ride home. Jojo's mansion. Vroom. With the roar of an engine, Jojo arrived at his mansion. He stepped out of the vehicle and walked toward the entrance, only to find the doors locked. Frowning slightly, he turned his attention to the house next door, where Kong and his family lived. However, when he arrived, he was greeted by the same sight: the door shut and locked. "Sarah, where's Jenny?" His brows furrowed in confusion. If Jenny wasn't home, and Kang's place was empty too, where had they gone? A familiar voice echoed through his mobile phone, his trusted AI, "Sarah." "Sir, currently, Mrs. Jenny, along with Mr. Kong and Ms. Inadu, have gone to investigate a level 1 supernatural case. Oddly enough, there are suspicions that it involves either an evil cult or a psychopath." Hearing Sarah's report, Jojo's expression shifted. "Oh? Inadu is out, shit." His eyes widened for a moment before he suddenly remembered he had promised to be there when Inadu woke up in her new cultivated body. Sigh. A breath of relief escaped him. Since it was only a level 1 case, there was no real reason to panic. With Jenny, Kong and Inadu all there, he was confident that they could handle anything that came their way. After all, if things got dangerous, Inadu was more than capable of dealing with it. "Give me the current status of the case." Calmly, Jojo turned back toward his mansion. He knelt down beside a flower pot, lifted it, and found the spare key tucked underneath a green rag. Click! With a swift turn of the key, he unlocked the door and stepped inside. Without wasting time, he headed straight to the bathroom, ready for a long, refreshing bath, all while Sarah continued updating him on Jenny's situation at the investigation site. Jenny's side. It was a rainy day. The steady drizzle pattered against the car roof as Jenny, Kong and Inadu sat inside, staring at the mansion before them. The house was isolated, far from the nearest settlement, standing alone like a forgotten relic. Jenny sat in the driver's seat, observing the building carefully. Beside her, Kong was peering through binoculars, trying to spot anything unusual through the mansion's foggy windows. In the back seat, Inadu sat silently, her hand extended through the open window, allowing the raindrops to fall onto her palm. Though she didn't show any expression, the gentle movements of her fingers revealed that she was enjoying the sensation. "All I see is a lonely old bastard." With a sigh, Kong lowered the binoculars, his tone filled with disappointment. "Sigh. Where are those super sexy cult ladies? Instead, we get an old geezer. Damn it, I didn't sign up for this." Kong rubbed his forehead, mentally cursing the reality that had shattered his fantasy of a mysterious cult filled with seductive women who lured men into their forbidden rituals. Frown. Jenny narrowed her eyes, her woman's instincts immediately sensing that her husband was up to no good. She shot him a sharp glare. "Let's wait for another half an hour before making a move. We can't judge someone based on their appearance." Jenny's calm voice broke the tension. She wasn't about to rush in blindly, not without solid proof. This old man was their prime suspect in the disappearance of several teenage girls from surrounding settlements. However, there was one chilling detail that tied all the cases together. Each missing girl was a devoted believer of God. Regardless of their religion, they had either spoken publicly about their faith or participated in events celebrating their devotion shortly before vanishing. It was Sarah who detected the pattern and flagged it as a potential supernatural case. When they arrived near the mansion, Inadu had suddenly stopped them. She had felt something. "There's a heavy dark aura here," Inadu had said, her tone serious. Someone has attempted various dark rituals inside this house, but every single one of them failed. That was enough to make them stop and investigate further. Jenny had even asked Sarah if she could connect to any device inside the mansion, perhaps a mobile phone, computer, or even a television. To their shock, there was nothing. The owner of this mansion didn't use a phone, didn't own a computer, and didn't even have a TV. It was as if he completely lived off the grid. Left with no other choice, they decided to observe the mansion, watching for anything unusual. Kong, still skeptical, exhaled loudly. Yeah, there's a lot of dark aura, all right. But I don't see anything suspicious yet. Inadu, still playing with the rain, finally spoke up, her eyes returning to the mansion. Let's go in and kill him. A sharp killing intent radiated from her words, her voice calm yet deadly serious. Before Kong or Jenny could respond, another voice suddenly interrupted them. Let's hurry up, after this house, we need to return to the church. Father Kennedy asked us to be back earlier. Jenny's eyes snapped to the source. Two young girls, dressed in modest clothing, were pushing their bicycles toward the mansion's front door. Sure, after this house, we'll call it a day, Sister Paxton. The second girl, Barnes, rolled her eyes playfully as the two of them approached the entrance. From inside the car, Jenny, Kong, and Inadu watched silently, their eyes fixed on the two unsuspecting girls. The girls rang the doorbell and waited. A few moments later, the mansion door creaked open, and the old man stepped out, his face wrinkled with a kind smile. He spoke to them gently, his posture relaxed, as if he were just a harmless elder welcoming guests. But then, the two girls stepped inside. And the moment they crossed the threshold, the old man shut the door. Click! The sound of the lock turning echoed louder than the rain. Inadu's eyes narrowed. I smell conspiracy. Without another word, she stepped out of the car, her posture tense, and started walking toward the mansion. Seeing her reaction, Jenny and Kong knew this wasn't just suspicion anymore. Something was very wrong. They quickly followed Inadu, their pace hurried. This mission had just taken a dark turn. Asterisk. Author's POV. A/N. Thanks for reading the chapter. Please give a review and Power Stone. Chapter 134, Chapter 129, Tree lives for only 24 hours. Inadu stood before the mansion's grand doors, her fingers twitching, ready to blast them open with magic. But she paused. She turned and glanced over her shoulder at Kong, who was grumbling behind Jenny. A plan formed in her mind. A scene from a detective movie she had watched with Alex yesterday surfaced in her thoughts. The detective had outsmarted the culprit by tricking them into opening the door rather than forcing their way inside. Her eyes lit up. This could work. She snapped her fingers. Jenny, you're with me. Then, she turned to Kong with a devilish smirk. Kong, you're the decoy. Kong froze, pointing at himself. Me. He let out a dramatic sigh, rubbing the back of his neck. If it were a sexy woman, I'd say my pleasure. But an old man? Geez. He grumbled under his breath, shaking his head. But after a moment, his expression changed. A wicked grin spread across his face. Well, whatever. That half-dead geezer's about to be fully dead with just one punch. Kong cracked his knuckles. His self-defense training learned from watching karate shows on TV every evening was finally about to pay off. After that horrifying ghost house incident, where he had almost sacrificed his soul because his wife conned him into believing a monster house was an angel, he had vowed never to trust her judgment on anything supernatural. But now? Now, he had a chance to prove himself. Even if his opponent was just an old man. Sorry, buddy, but I need to show off in front of my wife. Still grinning smugly, Kong pressed the doorbell. The door opens. Slowly. Ring ring. Inadu cast a concealment spell on herself and Jenny, ensuring that the old man would unconsciously ignore them. There was no response from inside. Kong frowned. Ring. He pressed the doorbell again. Then, click, click, click. The sound of multiple locks being unlatched filled the air. A second later, the door creaked open just a fraction. A pair of cold, calculating eyes peered through the gap. The kindly old man who had welcomed the two teenage girls earlier was gone. Instead, there stood a different person entirely. His face was expressionless, his voice flat and monotone. How can I help you? He did not open the door fully, only just enough to observe Kong. Kang's eyes narrowed. Can you send the girls out? He folded his arms, trying to look intimidating. His voice was firm, serious, pressuring the old man to comply. The tension crackled in the air. Neither side moved. The game had begun. Underscore. Kang's eyes sharpened as he closely watched the old man's reaction. When Kong mentioned the girls, there was a flicker of hesitation just for a second. But Kong caught it immediately. The brief pause before the old man answered told him everything he needed to know. Then, the old man spoke, his voice calm, almost rehearsed. No, there are no girls in here. He shook his head, his face unreadable. Kong scoffed, crossing his arms. Do you think I'm blind, old man? His voice hardened. I saw them enter this house with my own eyes. If you don't call them out, I'm calling the cops. The air grew heavy. Kong wasn't backing down. Jenny and Inedu, still hidden under Inedu's spell, exchanged a glance. This confirmed it. This old man was hiding something. And whatever it was linked to the missing teenage girls. The old man let out a deep sigh, his shoulders slumping like a man burdened by life. Give my old bones some rest, will you? He said, rubbing his temples. I'm just a family man. My wife is in the kitchen right now, cooking something special for our anniversary. He adjusted his glasses, his expression seemingly helpless. There are no girls here except my wife. But if you don't believe me... His lips curled into a small, knowing smile. Come in and check for yourself. As if to prove his innocence, he stepped aside, fully opening the door. Kong hesitated for a moment, then nodded and stepped inside. His eyes darted around, scanning the house. Inedu and Jenny slipped in behind him, unnoticed, thanks to Inedu's earlier spell. Inside, the house was clean. Too clean. Everything was perfectly arranged except for one thing. The couch. Its fabric was wrinkled as if someone had just been sitting there minutes ago. Kong narrowed his eyes. Before he could say anything. Click. The old man shut the door. And then... Click. 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 He locked it. Not just with one lock. But several. Kong spun around, his instincts flaring. And then... Tick. 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 A timer started. Kang's stomach dropped. It was a timer lock. The door wouldn't open until the time ran out completely. The locks clicked into place one after another. Kang's gut twisted. Then, he noticed something strange. The old man subtly moved his hand across the table, picking up 2 cups. Before Kong could even register what he was doing, the cups were gone. But Inedu and Jenny saw everything. They exchanged a silent glance. This man was hiding something. Can I know why you're looking for the girls? The old man's voice was warm, his smile kind. But his eyes were sharp. Kong clicked his tongue, smirking. I have no obligation to tell you, old man. His tone was cocky, but deep inside, something felt off. The old man chuckled, shaking his head. Fine, fine. It's a rainy day, and we rarely get guests. Why don't you wait here? I'll make you some coffee. He turned and disappeared into the kitchen. As soon as the old man was out of sight, Jenny leaned in. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Kang, he's the one." Kang's eyes darkened. This was not just an old man. This was the monster they had been searching for. Without hesitation, Kang started searching the living room. But it was too clean. Suspiciously clean. There was nothing out of place. Like someone had wiped away all traces of evidence. His fingers twitched. "Damn it! Where's the proof?" he muttered under his breath. Then, a small glint caught his eye. Something shiny wedged under the sofa leg where the old man had been sitting. Kang knelt down and reached for it. His fingers closed around cold metal. He pulled it out. It was a silver cross necklace. And not just any necklace. It was small. Delicate. A girl's necklace. Kang exhaled sharply. A clue. But before he could examine it further. Thud. Thud. Footsteps. The old man was coming back. Kang shoved the necklace into his pocket. He leaned back on the couch, stretching his arms casually. Then, just as the old man entered, he grinned and cracked a joke, acting like he hadn't just found evidence of something sinister. The old man's eyes flickered as if he was watching Kang closely. Something about his smile felt wrong. The old man returned with a tray. On it, 2 cups of steaming coffee. He placed them carefully on the tea table. Kang grabbed one and lifted it. Then, "Don't drink it." Inedu's voice was low but firm. Kang froze. His grip tightened around the cup, but he didn't sip. Instead, he tilted it slightly, pretending to take a drink. "Can I ask you something, mister?" The old man's smile was calm, but his eyes weren't right. Kang's brain spun for a fake name. "Jason." The old man nodded slowly. "Jason. Do you believe in God?" His voice was casual, friendly, but there was a flicker of something else. Something unstable. Kang's stomach churned. This guy was off his rocker. "My patience is running low, old man." Kang's tone turned sharp. "Call the girls." He was done with the mind games. No more distractions. No more stupid questions. Where the hell were they? The old man sighed, his shoulders slumping. All right. You win." He gestured toward the back door. "They left through there. They seemed scared of you. Asked me to stall you until they got far enough away." A friendly shrug. A casual tone. Like he was just a helpful old man. Kang, Jenny, and Inedu didn't even need to exchange glances. This was it. The proof they needed. Because every single word that just came out of his mouth was a lie. And now, he had nowhere to run. The old man thought he had fooled Kang. What he didn't know, Kang was lying too. He had seen through the old man's excuse from the start. "Is that so?" A calm, feminine voice cut through the air. The old man's body tensed. He whipped around. And his blood ran cold. 2 women stood behind him. They had appeared out of thin air. His jaw fell open. How did? Thud. Before he could finish, a violent force slammed into his chest. Boom. He flew backward like a rag doll, crashing hard against the wall. The old man's body hung suspended, pinned to the wall by an invisible force. Then, slam. The door he had pointed to burst open, the lock shattering from the sheer force. Inside, the room was chaos. Scroll-framed pictures of gods from countless religions. Open book stacks of ancient books piled high. Moai stone statues of deities lined the shelves. A place of worship. But also a place of obsession. And then, on the floor, a dark, crimson trail. Blood. Leading to another door. Inedu wasted no time. She flung open the next door. A staircase spiraled downward, disappearing into pitch-black darkness. Kong, Jenny, and Aneta descended, the old man still floating helplessly behind them. His mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. Heavy chains clanked. 2 teen girls sat on the damp floor bound in iron shackles. Their eyes went wide with terror. At first, they thought the old man was coming back to torture them again. But then they saw the strangest sight imaginable. The psycho who captured them, floating in the air, his limbs twitching, his face twisted in silent horror. "Phew, finally found you." Aneta sighed in relief. With a single flick of her wrist, crack! The iron chains shattered into dust. The girls were free. The rescued girls clutched each other, their bodies trembling. They were free, but their eyes were still haunted. Aneta could feel it. The deep, lingering fear in their souls. Then, thud! A muffled sound echoed from the far wall. A sound of life. Then, mumbling. Faint. Weak. Desperate. Aneta's eyes darkened. She lifted her hand. And boom! The iron door exploded inward. The sight that met them a nightmare. Iron cages. Row after row. Each filled with young girls. Some clutched the bars, eyes wide with fragile hope. Some huddled in corners, too broken to react. Others, their eyes were dim, like empty shells. Like they had accepted death. "Fuck! You fucking psycho!" Crack! Kang's fist connected with the old man's jaw, sending him sprawling. His easygoing nature was gone. Only rage remained. Spitting on the ground, Jenny growled. "We should take him to Jojo, he'd make his death more painful." Her teeth clenched, eyes burning with fury. Aneta, however, her face was calm. Too calm. "Why take him?" she said, voice cold as ice. "I'll make sure his death is the most agonizing one." With a simple gesture, she released the old man from the spell, letting him collapse to the ground. The old man gasped for air, his body trembling. Then, with curious eyes, he asked, "Are you God's messenger?" His voice was steady, as if he had finally found his answer. Aneta frowned. Even now, in his final moments, the old man was still rambling nonsense. "Then, you remind me of someone." His voice weakened, but his eyes gleamed with eerie fascination. "A priestess. Worshipped as God's messenger. They tried to burn her alive as a witch. But she wouldn't die. Not until they gouged her eyes out." He let out a wheezing laugh. "I wonder, if you are the same." Snap! Aneta's hand shot out, gripping the old man's throat. His laughing stopped. Then, screams. His life force drained at an alarming speed. His flesh withered, his healthy body mummified before their eyes. Then, crack! A tree burst from his abdomen. It grew rapidly, its roots binding him to the ground. Unmoving. Unrelenting. The old man screamed. But the worst was yet to come. Aneta watched him struggle unblinking, emotionless. The tree will live for 24 hours. Every minute, a leaf will fall. With each fallen leaf, the pain will increase. And when the last leaf falls, she met his terrified gaze. "You die." The old man's pale face twisted in horror. Then, he screamed. A sound so horrific, it sent shivers down the spines of everyone present. But Aneta turned away. They escorted the girls out, not sparing the old man a single glance. They sealed the basement door shut. The screams continued. But no one listened. Asterisk. Author's POV. A/N. Thanks for reading the chapter. Please give a review in Power Stone. Chapter 135, Chapter 130, All. They. Time. Forks. Jojo's residence. Jojo sat on the couch, arms crossed, observing the two girls standing before him. His sky-blue eyes narrowed slightly, curiosity flickering in them. The girls shifted uneasily under his gaze, their expressions a mix of nervousness and uncertainty. His gaze flicked toward Jenny, who sat nearby, sipping her freshly brewed tea with an air of calm amusement. Who are they? Jojo finally asked, arching an eyebrow. Jenny glanced at the girls before answering. They're survivors, victims of the serial killer. Jojo hummed in understanding. And why are they here? A soft chuckle escaped Jenny's lips as she took another sip of tea. For that, you'll have to ask Inedu. Jojo turned his attention toward Inedu, who was standing by the refrigerator, happily munching on a slice of strawberry cake. She barely acknowledged the conversation until Jojo's eyes landed on her. They both have talent in magic. She explained between bites. So, I figured I'd take them in if they're interested, of course. Jojo's brows lifted slightly. Is that so? He leaned back, rubbing his chin. That works out, actually. I've been meaning to start practicing witchcraft myself. Inedu froze mid-bite, her eyes gleaming with excitement. Really? She asked, practically bouncing in place. Jojo smirked and gave her a small nod. Yet. A mischievous glint crossed Inedu's expression as she set her cake aside. In that case, I might have an idea, something that's been on my mind for a while. Jojo's curiosity piqued. Oh? What could it be? Inedu hesitated, then sighed. I'll tell you, when I'm sure about it. Jojo studied her for a moment but didn't push further. All right, take your time. The room fell silent for a moment before one of the girls, gathering her courage, took a step forward. Hi. My name is Fina Bainers. She introduced herself, her voice tinged with nervousness. The other girl followed suit. I'm Sophie Paxton. Jojo offered them a relaxed smile, waving a hand in a friendly gesture to ease their tension. Nice to meet you. I'm Jojo Satoru. His expression darkened slightly, his voice turning serious. Are you sure about your decision? He looked between them. Once you cross this line, there's no turning back. A heavy silence followed. Fina and Sophie exchanged glances, their hands clenching into fists as memories of their near-death experience surfaced. The cold fear, the helplessness, the sight of the women who had suffered worse fates than them, it all flashed before their eyes. If Inedu, Jenny, and Kong hadn't arrived in time. They shuddered. That future, a future of terror and helplessness, was not an option. Their eyes hardened with resolve. We're sure. Fina finally said, her voice steady. We want this. Sophie added, nodding firmly. A smirk tugged at the corner of Jojo's lips. Then welcome to the path of the unknown. Flashback. The stench of blood and decay lingered in the air as the two girls Fina and Sophie stood frozen, their minds struggling to comprehend the impossible events unfolding before them. A moment ago, they had been captives, helpless against the old man who toyed with their emotions like a puppet master. Now, they watched as Inedu, the mysterious woman who had saved them, cursed him with magic. Their breath hitched when they saw a tree sprout from the man's abdomen, its roots twisting and binding him to the ground. The old man screamed, his face contorted in pure agony. For every leaf that falls, your pain will intensify. Inedu's voice was cold, merciless. This tree will live for 24 hours. When it withers, so will you. Fina and Sophie shuddered. The curse was beyond anything they had ever imagined, a slow, inescapable death sentence. But what followed was even more shocking. After ensuring the old man was completely bound, Inedu turned her magic toward them and the other rescued women. Warm golden light glowed around her hands as she healed their wounds, bruises fading, cuts sealing, broken bones mending. The pain they had endured just moments ago was now nothing but a fading memory. And then, Inedu did something unbelievable. She placed her hands on the foreheads of the other victims, her eyes glowing faintly. With a soft whisper, she erased their memories, or at least, the worst parts of them. They would remember being captured, but not the old man's face, nor the location of their imprisonment. All they would recall was waking up in a playground nearby, free from the trauma that could have destroyed them. Fina and Sophie watched in stunned silence. Their worldviews had been shattered. Magic was real. Witches were real. And now, they were standing in front of one. Just as Inedu moved toward them to do the same, she paused, her golden eyes meeting theirs. "Are you both interested in becoming witches?" Fina and Sophie's breath caught in their throats. The question was so unexpected that for a moment, they couldn't respond. If someone had asked them this yesterday, they would have laughed it off as nonsense. They were Mormon missionaries, volunteers of the church, sent to preach and convert people. But that was before. Before they were broken and humiliated by a monster in human skin. Before they felt true helplessness. And before they saw what true power looked like. Their faith clashed with their fear. The church had always condemned witches as evil, branding them as sinners. History was littered with witch hunts led by religious authorities. If they took this path, there would be no turning back. Fina and Sophie exchanged a long, uncertain look. Their hands trembled, their minds racing. Then, gulp. Fina swallowed hard and took the lead. "If we become witches, can we really do magic?" Her voice was quiet, uncertain but filled with hope. Inedu simply nodded. Sophie adjusted her glasses, her curiosity outweighing her fear. "Are there more witches like you?" Jenny, who had been silently watching, let out a small chuckle, shaking her head. "Believe me," she smirked. "You'll be shocked by the people you're going to meet." A heavy silence fell. The two girls turned to each other once more, searching for answers in each other's eyes. And in that moment, they knew. They had already made their decision. Their fingers clenched into fists, their expressions hardening. Together, they spoke in unison. "We want to become stronger. We want to become stronger." They would never be powerless again. Flashback ends. After recalling the previous incident, both Fina and Sophie's eyes hardened with determination. Their voices were steady and resolute as they declared. "We want to become witches." Jojo observed them carefully. Their expressions, posture, and tone all spoke of a decision not made lightly. He gave a satisfied nod. He could tell they had thought this through. Just as this conversation unfolded, the door swung open. Freya had returned. She had previously gone to the DMC headquarters to assess the situation, and now, she stood in the doorway with an expression of shock and disbelief. Her gaze flickered to Inedu, who was calmly sipping tea after finishing her cake. "Did I just hear correctly?" Freya asked, her voice laced with surprise and mild concern. "You actually picked up a couple of disciples. Underscore 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 underscore. Underscore 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 underscore." Hearing the concern in Freya's voice, both Sophie and Fina exchanged confused glances. Cough cough. "I need a change. And besides..." Inedu cleared her throat dramatically, trying to cover up her embarrassment. "My mother once mentioned I have quite some talent in teaching." Her confident declaration wasn't fooling anyone. "What about you guys? Did you catch the Dark Warlock?" Seeing that her attempt to mask her embarrassment had failed, Inedu quickly changed the subject. "Sigh. It's quite a story. That thing was a slippery demon." With a tired sigh, Jojo leaned back and began recounting his experience with Jeepers Creeper. As the story unfolded, Inedu's eyes sparkled with intrigue, and soon enough, she was cursing her own bad luck. "If I had woken up in this new body just half a day earlier, I could have gone with you." She groaned, feeling like she had missed out on a thrilling hunt. No wonder, you didn't want Kong or me with you. Jenny, deep in thought, nodded in understanding. A demon that eats human body parts to regenerate itself. Yeah, that doesn't sound like something we should have tagged along for. Suddenly, Kong let out a dramatic sigh of relief, wiping an imaginary tear from his eye. Jojo, you made a great decision. Before anyone could react, Kong hugged Jojo tightly and spoke with genuine gratitude. You're a savior, man. You have no idea what kind of nightmare you just saved me from. He shuddered, visibly shaken. If Jenny had gone along, he could already imagine the scenario: his beloved wife smiling sweetly at him and asking him to take down the Jeepers Creeper guy with his bare hands. Shudder. Just the thought of it sent chills down Kang's spine. He immediately shook his head, trying to erase the terrifying mental image. Thud. A playful smack landed on his head. Do you really think I would do that? Jenny huffed, arms crossed. When have I ever put you in a difficult spot? Kong didn't dare answer. But in his mind? All. They. Time. Asterisk. Author's POV. A/N. Thanks for reading the chapter. Please give a review and Power Stone. Chapter 136, Chapter 131, Time Skip. Freya confesses. R18. 6 months later. For the past 6 months, Jojo had been training in witchcraft alongside Sophie and Fina under Inatu's guidance. Since he could use magic, he was determined to master it. Occasionally, even Freya joined the lessons. Despite being a 1,000-year-old witch, she was always eager to learn new spells or techniques that caught her interest. During this time, many things had changed, but one of the biggest surprises came from Edward Cullen. After avoiding Bella for weeks, trying to process the truth about her pregnancy and Carlisle's insistence that she be turned into a cold one, Edward had been running from his responsibilities. Bella, on the other hand, had been trying to confront him about her desire to become a vampire. Edward always found a way to evade her, but his reality check came hard and fast from none other than Rosalie Hale. After an intense conversation with Rosalie, Edward finally faced his feelings. He made a shocking decision, one that no one had expected. Edward proposed to Bella, officially making their relationship boyfriend and girlfriend. Bella, with a wide, ecstatic smile, accepted immediately. But what Edward did next stunned everyone, including Bella herself. He decided to speak with Charlie Swan to face him like a man and formally ask for Bella's hand in marriage. 2 days later, Edward stood in front of Charlie Swan's house. As Charlie opened the door and saw Carlisle's son standing there, his brows furrowed in confusion. Edward? He questioned, puzzled as to why the young man had shown up at his doorstep unannounced. Then his gaze shifted to Bella, who stood beside Edward, looking flustered and absent-minded. Before Charlie could ask anything, Bella ran toward Edward and hugged him tightly. A sudden realization hit Charlie like a bullet. His eyes widened in shock. No way, could it be? His mind raced, his fatherly instincts screaming in alarm. Was Carlisle's son about to say what he thought he was going to say? Charlie exhaled sharply, his grip on the door tightening. Just as Charlie had suspected, his innocent daughter alongside the Cullen bastard stood before him with serious expressions, informing him about their relationship. ________. With each word that left Bella's lips, Charlie's face darkened. His thoughts raced. She's grown up. She's grown up. Taking a deep breath, he reminded himself that Bella was an adult now. That he needed to respect her decisions. But the bulging vein on his forehead told a different story. Charlie clenched his jaw before speaking. I know, Bella. You've grown up. And I've trusted your decisions all along. But before I make any decision about this, I need to know that he is a good guy. His gaze snapped to Edward, narrowing in scrutiny. I need to be sure. His voice was controlled, but the underlying anger was impossible to miss. Bella, sensing the tension, quickly spoke up. Father. She could tell that he wasn't happy. But she wanted to make it clear she was firm in her decision to be with Edward. Charlie exhaled sharply, rubbing his temple. Right. Bella, as your father, I have the right to decide whether or not he is suitable. Waak waak. Before he could finish, Bella suddenly bolted to the side of the garden and began vomiting. Charlie's eyes widened. Edward froze, his face going pale. The only sound that filled the yard was Bella retching into the bushes. Charlie's hands clenched into fists. His mind snapped to one terrifying thought. No. No way. A chill ran down his spine. Could it be? Slowly, he turned to Edward. The young vampire stood there, looking like he was about to face the guillotine. Charlie's fingers twitched toward his gun. Edward. Cullen. His voice was dangerously low. Explain. Right. Now. Seeing Bella hunched over, both Edward and Charlie rushed to her side. Edward placed a gentle hand on Bella's back, his face twisted in concern. Bella, did you forget your pills? The words slipped out of Edward's mouth in his panic. The second the sentence left his lips, he froze. Bella's eyes widened in horror. Silence. Then. What pills? Charlie's voice was low and sharp, slicing through the tension like a blade. His narrowed eyes locked onto Edward with deadly suspicion. His cop instincts were screaming at him. Something wasn't right. And his daughter, his innocent little girl, was hiding something from him. Along with this Cullen bastard. Charlie's grip tightened into fists as he took a slow step forward. Edward stiffened, feeling the full weight of Charlie's interrogative glare. Bella let out a nervous laugh, wiping her mouth. Dad, it's not what you think. Charlie didn't buy it for a second. Try me. His voice was calm, too calm. The kind of calm that sent criminals sweating in an interrogation room. Edward swallowed hard. Oh, he was so screwed. Bella shot Edward a desperate look. Edward refused to make eye contact. Charlie exhaled sharply, his patience running dangerously thin. Either one of you explains what's going on right now. His hand hovered near his belt where his gun usually rested. Or I start making phone calls. Bella paled. Edward looked like he'd rather face an army of Volturi than continue this conversation. Charlie's eyes darted between the two. And then realization hit him like a truck. His face drained of color. His jaw clenched. And when he finally spoke, his voice was dangerously quiet. Bella. Are you? Bella opened her mouth. But no words came out. That silence? It was all the confirmation Charlie needed. Automobile honk. Honk. Just as Charlie's rage was about to explode, the sound of a car horn cut through the tension. A sleek car pulled up in front of the Swan household and out stepped Jojo, Rosalie, and Alice. Jojo's signature grin was wide as ever as he casually approached the three frozen figures in the yard. Hey, Bella. Heard you and Edward finally decided to confront your dad. And by the looks of it, that conversation already happened. Oh, it happened all right. Behind him, both Rosalie and Alice giggled softly, watching the scene unfold. Charlie, still in shock, turned toward Jojo, his brain barely processing his arrival. You. Charlie narrowed his eyes, ready to demand what the hell he was doing here. Hi, sir. Jojo Satoru. We've met before. Hope you remember me. Jojo reached out, shaking Charlie's hand like this was a casual visit and not an absolute disaster zone. Charlie barely gripped his hand back, still trying to piece everything together. And then Jojo did what Jojo does best. He dropped a bomb. Birthday cake. Since everything's already out in the open, let's cut the cake and celebrate this memorable moment. What, memorable moment? Charlie's voice dripped with confusion. Edward tensed. Bella froze. What do you mean, sir? Jojo's smile remained gentle, far too innocent. Edward instantly realized what Jojo was about to say. Jojo, wait. Too late. Jojo, with zero hesitation, zero fear, and maximum enthusiasm, announced. Party popper, congratulations. You're a grandfather, party popper. Everything stopped. The wind blew. The birds stopped chirping. Even the trees seemed to pause. Bella and Edward stared at Charlie like deer caught in headlights. And Charlie? His face went blank. His eyes darkened. His fist clenched. Grandfather. His voice was shaky, full of disbelief. Jojo, still smiling like a menace, nodded. Yep. That means your daughter is going to be a mother. Oh. And in case you were wondering who the father is. Dramatically, Jojo threw his arms around Edward's and Bella's shoulders. Microphone, it's none other than Ed, Ward. Fire. Charlie's face turned 5 shades of red. Fire. Edward visibly swallowed. Bella? On the verge of passing out. Jojo, completely unfazed, handed Bella the cake. Birthday cake here, take this. Esme made it special for the occasion. Since this is a family discussion, I'll be taking my leave. With a casual wave, Jojo, Rosalie, and Alice turned and walked back to the car like nothing had happened. Automobile engine starts. As they drove away, they heard the inevitable. Collision symbol, you bastard, collision symbol. Charlie's furious roar shook the entire neighborhood. Alice, seated in the car, sighed. Did we really need to do this? She asked, concern lacing her voice. Jojo, grinning from ear to ear, cleared his throat and spoke with mock seriousness. It's for your brother's own good. As his future brother-in-law, I have to make tough decisions to ensure he's on the right path. Rosalie, chuckling mischievously, added. But it was worth it, did you see Edward's face? Alice rolled her eyes, shaking her head. Sure. Deep down, she mentally sent condolences to her poor brother. He was never going to hear the end of this. After that day, Charlie was really angry at Edward, but soon, with helplessness, he accepted their relationship under one condition: Edward had to marry Bella within a month. After the marriage, Edward took Bella on a honeymoon trip, which lasted quite a long time, 3 months. Meanwhile, at the DMC, things were running normally without any level 4 supernatural cases. Lower-level supernatural cases, such as levels 1, 2, and 3, were handled by other members of the DMC. As for Jojo's production house, Creative Child, the shooting of Titanic had finally concluded successfully and entered post-production. For the past 6 months, Jojo had dedicated himself to practicing his magic. Present. Jojo and Freya were sitting at the dining table, eating a meal she had prepared. Jenny, Kong, and Alex had gone to Jenny's mother's house, leaving just the 2 of them. I didn't expect you to cook this well. Jojo looked surprised as he savored the food. Since Freya had arrived in Forks, she had never cooked, so he never expected her to be a hidden chef with such impressive skills. If you like it, I can cook for you daily. A beautiful smile bloomed on Freya's face, her voice carrying a hint of hope. If Jojo truly enjoyed her cooking, she was more than happy to prepare meals for him regularly. At the same time, her leg made contact with Jojo's under the table, teasing him with subtle movements. A playful smirk appeared on her lips as she continued, causing friction beneath the dining table. ________. You know you're playing a dangerous game, right? Jojo shuddered slightly but refused to back down. Not to be outdone, he retaliated with his own leg, meeting her teasing with equal intensity. His voice carried a warning, but there was a spark of amusement in his eyes. He didn't know exactly when it happened, but somehow, he and Freya had grown close, so close that he hadn't even realized it. Even though Freya would tease him occasionally, today felt different. There was something deliberate in her actions, a boldness in her touch as if she had made up her mind to take the next step. She stood from her seat and moved toward Jojo, her eyes locking onto his with an intensity that sent a shiver down his spine. As she approached, he swallowed hard, unable to look away from the deep, smoldering gaze fixed on him. I just remembered something. I promised Edward I'd play baseball with them. Sigh. Jojo averted his eyes, scrambling for an excuse to escape, but before he could react, a soft finger pressed against his lips, silencing him. Rosalie, Alice, Inadu, and the others won't be back until tomorrow. She whispered, her voice smooth like velvet. It's just you and me. His heart pounded in his chest as realization dawned on him. Don't tell me. Freya leaned in, her breath warm against his skin. They were so close now, inches apart. The heat radiating between them sent an electric charge through the air. Yet, I've bonded with you too. Can't you feel it? Her fingers ran through his hair as she spoke, her touch both delicate and possessive. Jojo's breath hitched. Now that she had said it, he could feel it, the invisible thread tying them together, pulling them closer. A wave of guilt washed over him. Freya had always been by his side, yet he had been blind to her feelings, blind to the bond they had already formed. Sorry, Freya. I should have noticed this sooner. Without thinking, he pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly against him. She had waited so long, watching him build bonds with others while she remained in the background, silently enduring. How much had she held back, waiting for him to realize? Smooch. It's not your fault, Jojo. She murmured against his skin. To be honest, I fell for you the first time you came to New Orleans. I even researched ways to bond with you, but I didn't need to force it. It happened on its own. She lifted his face, brushing her lips against his forehead. For a moment, there was silence. Then, as if pulled by an unseen force, their lips met. The kiss was slow at first, soft, exploring. But the dam had broken. The passion ignited between them like wildfire. Freya's hands tangled in his hair, pulling him closer, while Jojo's arms wrapped around her waist, pressing her against him. Their bodies molded together, the warmth between them growing unbearable. As the kiss deepened, their hands roamed, fingertips tracing the contours of each other's bodies beneath the fabric of their clothes. A quiet moan escaped Freya's lips as Jojo's hands found the curve of her back, pulling her flush against him. The heat of her skin against his own sent a surge of electricity through him. Minutes passed in breathless urgency. When they finally broke apart, a thin thread of saliva still connected their lips, their breaths heavy, eyes darkened with desire. Freya's gaze flickered with mischief and longing as she traced a finger down his chest. Giggle. Without a word, Jojo scooped her up into his arms in a bridal carry. Jojo. She laughed, her arms wrapping around his neck as he carried her toward his bedroom. The night was only just beginning. Freya giggled as Jojo carried her through the dimly lit hallway, her arms wrapped around his neck. Her laughter was light and teasing, but her eyes told a different story filled with heat, longing, and something deeper. Jojo's grip on her tightened as he stepped into his bedroom, the door clicking shut behind them. The air between them was charged, electric, and for a moment, they just stared at each other, the weight of what was about to happen settling in. Are you sure about this? Jojo asked, his voice lower, huskier than usual. Freya smiled, her fingers tracing the line of his jaw before running down the collar of his shirt. I've never been more sure of anything. She whispered, her breath warm against his lips. That was all he needed. He captured her lips again, this time with more urgency, more need. Freya responded eagerly, pressing herself against him, her body molding into his as if they were two halves of the same whole. His hands found the curve of her waist, sliding beneath her top, his fingertips grazing her bare skin. She shivered at the touch, sighing softly into his mouth as she tugged at his shirt, desperate to feel more of him. Jojo pulled back just enough to yank his shirt over his head, tossing it aside before reaching for hers. She lifted her arms willingly, letting him remove the fabric with ease. His gaze darkened as he took her in, the way her chest rose and fell with each breath, the way her skin glowed under the dim light. He traced a slow, reverent path down her arms, over her sides, memorizing every inch of her. "You're beautiful," he murmured, his voice filled with awe. Freya smiled, a faint blush dusting her cheeks. "You don't look so bad yourself," she teased before pulling him down for another kiss. Their bodies moved instinctively, hands exploring, fingers learning. Every touch, every caress sent sparks through them, igniting a fire that had been smoldering for far too long. Jojo gently laid Freya down on the bed, his body hovering over hers as he kissed a slow trail down her neck, across her collarbone, savoring every reaction. She arched into him, nails dragging lightly across his back as she whispered his name, breathless and wanting. Their clothes disappeared piece by piece, forgotten as they lost themselves in each other. Jojo moved with patience and devotion, his lips tracing every inch of her, his hands worshipping her curves as if she were something sacred. Freya's breath hitched as he pressed a kiss to her shoulder, then lower, each touch setting her skin ablaze. She pulled him closer, nails digging into his back as she met his gaze. "Jojo." He silenced her with another kiss, deeper this time, filled with everything he couldn't put into words. Their movements became fluid, and synchronized, as if they had done this 100 times before. The world outside the bedroom faded, time slowed, and all that remained was them tangled in each other, lost in pleasure, bound by something far stronger than mere attraction. As their bodies reached their peak, a final whisper of each other's names escaped their lips, their hands clasping together, their breaths mingling as they shattered and came undone in each other's arms. Jojo held her close, their bodies still intertwined, his fingers brushing through her hair as they lay in the afterglow. Freya nestled against his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. "That was," she murmured, a satisfied smile playing on her lips. Jojo chuckled, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "Yeah, it was." For the first time in a long while, everything felt right. And as they drifted off to sleep, wrapped in each other's embrace, they both knew this was just the beginning. **** Author's POV. /n. Thanks for reading the chapter. Please give a review and Power Stone. Chapter 137, Note, an idea for a new FIC. Yesterday, while I was sleeping, I woke up in the middle of the night. Out of nowhere, an idea or a concept for a new FIC hit my brain, making me say bye-bye to my sleep. Description: Rudra S. War, an 18-year-old teen who lost his sense of smell in a childhood accident, dies in a gas explosion. When he wakes up, he finds himself floating in the vast cosmos. Before him stand three figures in their cosmic forms, gazing at him. These three are the embodiments of the life cycle: the creator Brahma, the protector Vishnu, and the destroyer Shiva. They offer him 4 random power UPS and reincarnate him with a divine duty, to become the embodiment of hope and break the cycle of yugas. Third Eye and Hope system functions as a system that guides and rewards the MC. The third eye also contains destruction energy. Divine Body, locked, grants an otherworldly charm. 1 Destined to be with fate? Nature's son? Without knowing the full intricacies of what he's getting into, Rudra happily accepts and gets reincarnated. /n The MC will travel to different worlds, including movies, random ones, not just Indian films, anime, series, manga, etc. What do you guys think? This idea popped into my head out of the blue in the middle of the night and kept me up. If I actually turn this into a fanfic, I'd like to update it twice a week, maybe on Sundays.